Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are live on the Great Debate Community channel with the Flat Earth University BS course, Geocentricks 101 After Show on the Non Sequitur Show Discord server. Invite in the description. Before we go live, I just thought I'd introduce the show, and we are now going to go live on the Non Sequitur Show Discord. Give me a second to undeafen myself on the server and transition to that scene.
What do you even want to call that?
Painful.
We are now live, guys.
That's what it was. Painful.
Bad that even on my own personal Facebook page, Dr. Mays left. Wow, I tried, but I couldn't turn away. I feel dirty watching 2 hours of that, and I feel that was just. What are you gonna do, right?
Well, I can give that person a tip. Only lava will make them feel clean again. Bathing in lava is the only way to cleanse yourself after an experience like that.
Indeed.
Did you, right?
If you get near the edge of space, maybe all the atmosphere will just suck right out into the vacuum.
No, it's a different realm, mate. You can't do that.
When it comes to people like Votan, obviously there's deep-seated conspiratorial stuff there from something that happened during his upbringing of some kind. I mean, this whole flat Earth narrative always seems to boil down to conspiracy theories of some type, and a complete lack of understanding of science.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem that you just get a flat earther that it doesn't have everything else bundled in. They have the whole set.
Good deal.
It's just like a collection. How many conspiracy theories can we accept as true? He at least didn't go for the lizard people.
One though, I mean, look, if you're going to go balls deep and accept all these other bizarre conspiracies, I mean, we have Rose Patton who never met a conspiracy theory she didn't like. I mean, I at least think that's consistent though. Hey, everything's fucking conspiratorial. Okay, at least you're consistent on that.
Why is... I don't understand this. Why is Kyle, who's like the top done, server deafened and server muted? I don't get that. Are you there, Kyle?
I think so.
Okay, you are like server deafened and server mutant. I don't understand why, because you're the server owner.
Well, I wish I could have been server deafened about 3 hours ago. That would have saved me a lot of.
Kyle, I feel you. I spoke with Wonton for a long time last week. It wasn't a good thing for the brain.
Well, I was there when he was in the show with R and Raw, and I was just like, oh.
He wasn't that bad then. Like he wasn't like that. Like that.
No,
that.
No, that was.
I don't even know what that was.
That was full wonton.
Wonton.
You just got the full wonton, Kyle.
I will never recover from that ever.
So just want to double check. You guys in YouTube land can hear all of us then, right? Just say yes if you can, because
I will be surprised if there is even one that is still willing to continue to listen about the woes of Wonton.
What's the name of a poem? Like, you know, the lamentations of Votan, whatever the fuck his name is.
He wouldn't believe it existed if it did though.
Idiot. Just call him idiot.
Authority, like they're so they have such a great argument, right? It's like, oh, you all don't know what you're talking about, and all of science is wrong. Well, I'm not saying that science is wrong, but let me show you why all of science is wrong. I had somebody do that the other day. Literally, they had said, I'm not saying science was wrong, but in the same tweet, pointed out that Big Bang cosmology was wrong, evolution was wrong, quantum theory was wrong, everything was wrong, but they're not saying science is wrong.
This is Jamie. One of the things I noticed was at first he said, I cannot name an experiment that I can do. And then later he goes, I can't afford the experiments I have to do. How do you know you can't afford them if you can't name them?
Because he was getting backed into a corner. Like he's one of those people, he can see the end coming. You know what I mean? Like, and he's doing everything that he can to bounce around. I don't know. I don't know what. By the way, real quick, did we invite him? I don't want to, just be
Discord. I'm also taking people off server mute. But if you are on server mute or you come in and you're on server mute, all you gotta do is message in general. Hi, I'm this person, and we'll take you off server mute.
Yeah, Cam, you might. I took you off already, and for those that are mods and top none, please just add them the choir member role, and that should help out too. That's what they need.
And if you're listening, Wonton, because we were off air when we decided that I'm no longer going to try to pronounce your name correctly when I had to be exposed to what I was tonight. So you're back to Wonton, but if you're listening, you're more than welcome to join. We're not going to talk about you behind your back. So doors open if you want to do that.
Bo, you are already taken care of. If you can't talk in the him hangout, you might need to leave and come back.
We'll understand if you don't.
You know what this hangout needs? It needs more Debbie.
No.
Oh, no. Debbie. No, Debbie. No, here's the thing. Debbie has actually shut down effectively other Discords, and therefore people have left other Discords when Debbie is around. So, personally, I don't think Debbie is.
I miss Debbie.
People being on Discord, and so I would highly recommend that she's not allowed on Discord. But,
oh no, she's allowed to come. We can't not invite Debbie.
Ran people off Discord. I mean, literally, people have left.
I was part of that group that ran away.
When I tell you, if she comes over here, people are just going to leave to somewhere else because they do not want her on Discord.
Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Oh,
but bless her heart. She just needs people who care, guys. That's all. Just show her some love.
No.
No.
I will give Debbie one thing.
In here? Is that Scott?
I will give Debbie one thing. She heard about the crap with G-Man, and she unsubbed him.
See? There you go.
Don't bother with it.
Good job, Debbie.
She actually did one thing correct, so that's good on you, Debbie.
I don't even bother to even unsub. I don't bother most of the time.
Good job, Debbie. By the way, guys, I will be...
Somebody says, hey, this is hilarious. Go watch G-Man's video. Other than that, I don't bother watching him. I can't. Sometimes if I get a wild hair in my ass, I'm like, okay, fuck, nothing else is on. I'll go watch G-Man live, go, okay, this is fucking inane, and then go do something of more productivity, like, slice my wrist open. So
this weekend we're debating, so he issued a challenge to me, and I accepted, so...
You're going to debate him, are you?
Yep.
Not working. Fix your shit, Scott.
Hey, Kyle, were you in touch with Lloyd that did the little clip?
Oh,
for
yeah.
The...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he's a good guy. You should see about having him on and talk about, like, high control religions and stuff.
He's coming on the 6th.
Oh, great. I'd love to meet him. I was a JW sort of when I was a kid and stuff. So.
Oh, cool, yeah. He'll be...
We have quite a few mutual friends. I was trying to actually connect him to Steve before you guys already did it. You beat me.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I put out a I go to Reddit sometimes whenever I need like a specific type of guest, and I was actually looking for. We're having Telltale Atheist come on to tell his leaving Jehovah's Witness story, and
yeah, Telltale's good too.
Yeah, but I was looking for a Jehovah's Witness to come and like the theme of the discussions kind of try to explain some of the things that Telltale would be pointing out. But what was interesting was that the thread that I posted looking for a actual Jehovah's Witness, he actually responded to me through that. That's how he got a hold of me. And I got all excited because I thought he was an actual Jehovah's Witness. I was like, well, that's easy. I heard it was going to be really difficult.
Oh, yeah, good luck, man. They're told not to even surf the internet other than the JW site.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm finding that out. Like, I've put stuff everywhere, and no one is interested in having any type of interaction like that. What's crazy is they're willing to knock on your door or ring your doorbell at 8 o'clock in the morning, but you can't get them on a live stream to talk about their religion. I mean, where's the justice in that?
Well,
by the way, you guys see?
In a lot of ways, they're worse than Mormons, right? Like when it comes to being high control, they're similar in some ways. But...
I actually like Mormons. On this Friday, I'll be on. I think it's Mac's channel. I'll be discussing, Mormonism because I was Mormon. So
Oh, when Mormons knock on my door, I always invite them in. They're always really nice people. Crazy beliefs,
I
but
think they're the nicest people.
We
in the
have the
world.
Naked
They have
Mormon
no
coming on the
qualms
show
with
too, by
being
the way.
Mormon. Yeah.
That Sunday, the Naked Mormon will be with us.
Anyways,
well,
I do. He has
Shotgun
another
mic
channel.
check.
You guys know him all about it. It's called Telltale Science, and he tried to do one on nuclear reactors. And somebody had messaged me saying, "Hey, Steve, this video is so bad. We've asked him to take it down. Will you look it over?" He got so many things wrong, and I was like, "Telltale, just we're having a thing on Monday with me, Landon, Kurt Knoll, and Average Joe, who's a nuclear engineer, and we're going to be discussing reactors. Come check it out because I was just like, okay, this is not right. This is not right." So I love Telltale, but maybe he could kind of like stick with the theology stuff because it was like bad.
I say branch out, Telltale. Do your thing.
have you guys put any thought into who gets roasted next?
Yes.
Have you decided?
Yes, absolutely.
Is it announced?
Is it what?
Is it announced?
No. The roast will always be on Friday the 13th, so the next one will be coming up in July
One after that is 2022, I think.
19,
Yeah. Yeah, there's a bit of a wait for the next one.
which is good for us because that gives us plenty of time to prepare.
Exactly. I can get some roasters for the next one depending on who it is.
We're gonna shoot for 4 a year, one every three months.
We're getting
Shotgun
echo
mic
from.
check, guys. How's it
Bad.
working?
Mic check.
Check.
I had to grab out my shotgun mic. How's it going? How's it working? Sorry.
Better.
Here's an interesting question: who do you guys want to see roasted? And I'll that way I'll be able to tell you if you're close or not.
Landon Kurt Knoll.
Does it have to be someone we don't like?
It's
Not
it doesn't
necessarily.
have to, but I think the goal is trying to do it to people that are more like the Ken Hovind style. I don't want to roast like Landon. I mean, just there's
We
no
can have a roast in good taste like they used to do back with Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra, though.
Yeah, Landon would really enjoy it. I'm telling you right now. If you did that sort of like, tongue in cheek,
I'm
not
fine
too
with that.
nasty roast, I think Landon would be quite down with that.
I'm fine with that.
My vote would be Ray Comfort.
Well, you're close. He's number 3.
Fat Cam's getting Ray Comfort on with Aaron Ra there as well.
I can't get offended by Ray Comfort. I just laugh at him.
I don't think we'll ever get anybody that disagrees with Aaron's stances on with Aaron River again. After you see those first two, I don't think anybody goes, yeah, that's what I need to do.
Is it
Come
high-tech?
on, I've challenged him.
Who is the king, guys,
Broken Gates?
the king of stupidity and creation science?
Edgar.
Yeah. Mr. Intelligent Design and Kent Hovind, but he's been in the...
Forgetting True Appearism, by the way.
Well, that's
Pretty
pretty
easy
easy.
to forget.
Oh, wait. Don't tell me. Ken Ham?
No, Eric Hovind.
Bingo.
There we go.
Dang.
But we do have a little bit of a surprise. It's not it's nothing concrete yet. In fact, I just sent the initial response email back. But last week I reached just on a whim. I sent a Facebook message to Eric Hovind, and he responded with his publisher's email address and what I needed to tell her to try and set something up. So we are actively now in talks to get him on at some point.
But the thing is, if we get him and we don't bring in Shannon and or Apologia, we'll never hear the end of it. They've got. I mean, they've got.
I've already spoken to both of them about that.
Hey, Bo, your mic is like feeding everybody back and echoing really bad. Sorry to cut you guys off. It was just
Oh,
crazy.
that's kind of weird. It shouldn't be. How about now?
Test 1, 2.
Yeah, now it's
That's
our-
it.
Better now. Sometimes you have to remind it to use push to talk.
Yeah, I'm using push to talk now, but
Yeah, no, it was just taking everything. Oh, there it goes again.
Yeah, you're getting an echo again.
that's so weird. I have my mic on, no speakers, only headset, so it should be possible.
Strange.
Quite.
Did Google buy out Discord?
Yeah.
Surprise, right? Seriously.
And buy more stocks in Macintosh.
Oh, just for future reference, Kyle, my Twitter doesn't have a 0 at the end.
What-
Not with that
_,
attitude, it doesn't.
0. It's just Steve at Steve McRae _ There's no 0.
Huh. That must have been during that show. It just made my mind just nothingness. Don't you have something with a 0 on the end of it though? Or is that
Don't think so.
I think you do. I'm pretty sure you do, Steve. I know I'm not going that crazy.
I just saw a 0 at the end of your name. Was that on Facebook?
Twitter's
You know
just
what-
with an underscore.
You know what it
doesn't
might be
have a 0.
actually? It might be that you have an underscore. Is that what it is? You have an underscore at the end of your name?
At Steve McRae _ There's no 0 after the underscore.
That I may have just got a little 0 happy.
Find me on that later.
Flat Earth will do that to you.
Yeah. That wasn't even flat
This
Earth.
goddamn video has
Why is it
777
flat Earth?
views already. Shit.
No, it wasn't even flat Earth. Like, what's a good example of science being biased or whatever? 9/11.
I try to put graphics, the thumbnails up that kind of accurately depict what goes on in the Hangout. And I'm going to have to go back and redesign the entire thing and take the flat Earth off. And all I'm going to do is put 3 letters up there, W, T, and F, and just leave it. Because if you can walk away with a coherent description of whatever the fuck that was, then you're doing way better than I am.
11. I'm just gonna pin this for now. We'll forget there's no negative comments yet. Then we'll put the negative comment. But George says, and folks, this is how you take down a dishonest, disingenuous flat earther. Congratulations to Steve, Kyle, guileless engineer, Rumpus, Caitlin, and Chloe for a job well done. Thank you very much.
Congratulations. That's
Remember to
fucking
emphasis yet.
I gotta admit, I gotta say this. It's not terribly difficult to take down a flat earther, but it is fun. It is fun.
No experiments.
I'm gonna say it's
The
difficult, but
sign's
it is fun.
fun.
Well,
he
I mean,
wasn't even a flat earther. He was not even a flat. I don't even know what
Flat
to
earther.
call it.
I mean, I wasn't surprised by any of it. His MO is kind of to like get backed into a corner and then make a single last word statement and run. So
He's like, no experiment, and he left. That was awesome.
I would love to have him and Aaron Robb, but I love Aaron way too much to put him through.
Well, Aaron's got important work to do, and if you kill all of his brain cells, he won't be able to do it.
I know.
Just make sure he's hammered before the debate starts.
That might repair the damage.
No. You gotta numb the brain cells so they can't get hurt.
But he's the perfect. He's exactly what Aaron Raw was, made to do. Like that. Let me take your argument and bitch slap you around with it for 45 minutes. I mean, no one deserves it more than one time. No one.
Yeah, pretty
I
much.
think he likes it though, because it makes it look like you're like, I don't know,
It's that
running
persecution.
out of patience. I guess I don't know.
Oscon, it's very hard to hear. Your mic is
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm gonna turn off my fan.
or based or
I don't know, man. It's just a webcam mic.
That's
It's
why.
it's supposed to be good though. I don't know.
It's garbage.
It is very garbage.
That's
we're
not
honest.
funny.
Let's wrong.
Oh, it's on the floor. That might explain.
Ow. Hurts.
Before I explode here, I had so many things I wanted to yell. I was trying to yell through my computer screen to get you guys to hear them during that debate, though. The guy's talking about,
I could literally hear you screaming from where you live.
yeah, the guy sitting there talking about water doesn't curve, and I'm like, did you not see the 0G experiments? You can say astronauts aren't really in space, but they're in 0G, and they take these buckets of water and just pull them away from, like pull the bucket away real quick, and you just got this globe of water just floating in air.
CGI, man.
No,
CGI.
that's Photoshop. That's Photoshop.
CGI, man.
Those are words.
Jamie, you need to yell harder. I live in Denmark. Yell harder the next time.
I definitely will. And then the whole thing with him saying you can't combine two things into one space-time, and I'm thinking to myself, you're using the internet right now. Do you believe in electromagnetic radiation?
That would have
No.
that would have went sailed right over. He didn't get where I pointed out that he was willing to use the null hypothesis that's backed up by a how-to website. And I pointed out that you can also find on that very same website an explanation for gravity. Yet he won't accept the gravity one, but he does put stock in the null hypothesis one. I mean, that right there is the prime example of why he's just either utterly stupid or disingenuous. I mean, and I don't know which is worse in this case.
I got a question for you, Kyle.
Sure.
So, and maybe Steve can chime in too, but is the purpose of having folks like Wotan on to try to change his mind, or is the idea more to like educate the audience, or perhaps even show how stupid it is?
That's a good question. I think it depends on the guest and the subject matter. I think when you're talking something like flat Earth, you can dive into science and those kind of things, but you have to ultimately remember what the topic of the discussion is, which is flat Earth. Which I mean, I think we all can agree that does not exist. So basically, what you want to do in those kind of situations is to show how utterly ridiculous it is to believe these things, but on simple things, because that's something that you don't have to overcomplicate that. It's easy to point out why the Earth, isn't flat. Now, if you're talking about something that goes more in depth, like religion or those kind of things, evolution, I think you do have to get more in on the technical aspects of it, because there are people die on one side or the other. So with those kind of things where science actually can make the difference between somebody's mind either being made up for or against, then yeah, I'm all for that. But in cases like this, where it's an utterly ridiculous topic from the get-go, I think you're just kind of you're giving them credibility by the deeper you go into things. When we all know they're not going to accept that, no matter how right it is. They're there to do one thing, and that is to put on a show.
But we do have to remember.
Let me add to that. Look, because I think it's a very fair question to ask. I have no great expectations of the flat earthers changing their positions. I do think a lot of it is for show. I'm not going to front on that. However, I do think it has educational value toward the people watching. Those who might be thinking, for whatever reason, that flat earthers may have a decent argument because they don't know about the science, they don't know about the physics. It can be easily watching videos. But we have had one success. His name was Jamal Williams. He was a flat earther for a very long time. He came into one of my hangouts, me, Reds, and a few other people. After about 2 hours, finally convinced him he's no longer a flat earther, but he's still a young earth creationist. Baby steps. But he at least recognizes that it is impossible to have a flat earth.
Yeah, I guess you can see it.
It can happen, but it's rare.
I mean, that's just that's my vision and the direction that I'm going to take those kind of conversations, because I think you waste time getting into trivial things that isn't going to affect what their stance is going to be. So, like, if you were talking with a scientist, that's different. But a flat earther, trying to explain to them like the nuances and details of gravity and quantum physics, I think it's just a complete waste of time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know who might be interesting to talk to, Kyle?
Who's that?
Michael Tillinger.
I'm writing his name down right now.
He ran for president in South Africa a while back, and he wrote a book called Ubuntu, which is like his own governmental structure he was trying to do, like a moneyless society. But he's really in ancient history and stuff, and it looks like recently he has converted into being a flat earther. But he is fairly well spoken and a reasonable person. I actually met him when he was traveling a while back, and nice, pleasant to talk to. But he's got some crazy ideas.
You said Tillinger?
Yeah, Tillinger, Tellinger. He's from Johannesburg.
Okay, that is interesting. I will. I have him on the list now.
Yeah.
Real quickly,
we do take all of your your suggestions, and every person that I've got a name from, I have contacted in one way or the other, whether they agree or they don't. I do put it out there, so we do take those definitely to heart.
Yeah, I think he's an interesting character. and he doesn't come across like some of his ideas are absolutely crazy, but he's at least well spoken about things. You know what I mean? Like he's come around, he's done conferences at like International Institute for Ancient Studies and a few other like places and whatnot over the years. So
that's my field right there. Now that's my I love talking about.
He's really big into like the megalithic yard and like ancient construction, and kind of buys into sort of like ancient civilizations having technologies that ran on sound or something. Like he's got some interest, like yeah, it's interesting the way he presents it. It's very likely entirely untrue and all that, but
not entirely.
This is the thing: is there is points that he makes, there is some things that he talks about that I think he's actually 100% correct on.
I would agree.
Like particularly, he talks about how, like the concept of money was sort of like introduced into society as a control mechanism, not necessarily intentionally, but he has like a whole bunch of ideas. He's pretty interesting character.
I will be contacting him. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
I know who he is. Was it the Ubuntu conspiracy or something like that?
Well, it wasn't the Ubuntu conspiracy. He wrote a book called what's it called? I'll look it up one sec.
I'm actually Googling him right now too.
No, I know who he is. But real quick, this is the kind of stuff that I would like to have SJ talk about, because SJ Thompson just tagged me in a tweet. One of the greatest proofs of God is that we all have a moral compass. We crave and expect love, righteousness, honesty, and fairness. Why is that, Steve McRae? Well, I responded, and why do we need a God to have morality? I mean, I think that's just a bare assertion. But that's the kind of discussions that I like to have on the Non Sequitur show. If we can get SJ in to talk about that with somebody, why having a moral compass have anything to do with relating that to a deity? I don't get the argument.
Oddly enough, that will be the subject of G-Man and our debate this weekend.
Good luck with that.
So, Steve.
Oh, I know. Tell me about it.
Do you know Graham Oppy?
I don't know him personally, but I know him, of course.
So he's got a new book coming out at the moment on naturalism. He might be a good interview.
I'm reaching out to him before. If we ever do something a lot more along the lines of philosophy of religion, but he's a big name.
You might be able to get him. So Capturing Christianity, the one that Cameron Patuzzi runs.
Just talked to him. I just talked to him today. He just talked to or actually yesterday, I guess, and he talked to Kyle. We're going to get Capturing Christianity on. I know he knows a lot of people like Grant Opie. He knows William Craig. So we're gonna try to see what we can do.
We're looking at the 17th, tentatively.
Cameron in for a discussion on these topics. That'd be great. I mean, he seems like a real nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he's quite nice.
I'm a fan of his hair.
He's a good-looking guy.
Very good. Very good looking.
It's got really gay really quick.
Well, look what we're doing.
Are you really surprised?
I mean, I'm not surprised.
They want to use the word fabulous
hoping.
because they think it's cultural appropriation. You can't use that, Steve. You're not
Stop.
gay.
Stop. Don't let this go down that road.
Oh, bring
I like
on the gayness.
fabulous. Gay to use the word fabulous. I will take anybody in discussion with that.
Who would have a discussion about that, though? Like, really?
Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so Capturing Christianity had Graham Oppy on a while back. I guess that's maybe because they know him, but...
He had, the last one I saw with him, he had...
Alex Malpass on, and they had Barnes, what's his name? Barnes, the cosmologist. I watched that, and that was on the fine-tuning. And you know what? I was actually kind of surprised because I thought both of them did really well. I saw comments that people were saying, and in fact, I talked to Alex on this because they were saying that Alex kicked their ass, and I told Alex, look, I don't think either one of you guys kicked each other's ass. I thought it was a very good discussion, and both of you guys had brought valid points, and Alex agreed with that. He was rather surprised that people were saying, oh, well, look at Malpass kicking this guy's ass. I don't think Alex kicked his ass. I think it was just a very good discussion between two very intelligent people.
Which Alex was this?
Alex Malpass. I think that there were a number of issues which Luke failed to address that Malpass put forward.
I like the approach that Luke brought. I like the fact he really got into the thing that I think it was Brian Cox had brought up about if you have different types of dimensionalities, you do lose certain things about with baryons. You do lose all these different things. There could be no other way to have a stable universe except for the one we have. And if you're going to have a fine-tuning argument, that is the way to go about it. The thing he was talking about.
So, universes can exist in like higher dimensions. Is that what you're saying?
Certain constructs, certain space-time constructs with different dimensionalities are unstable.
I see. Well, they're unstable for us to see, right? But are they unstable in general, like independent of Mars?
Unstable, if I'm not mistaken. But
well, I mean, string theory does posit that there are more dimensions, but that they're curled up, right?
Tightly knitted. Those are 10 dimensions or higher in a very, very small area. That's for gluons, right? I mean, you're talking about something on the Planck level. We're talking about space-time dimensionality as a whole. We can think of space-time as 3 dimensions of spatial relationships and one temporal, which is a Neo-Lorentzian type model. But that model is kind of antiquated. The current model, as I understand it, is that it's 4D, and those dimensions are then broken down into space-time as one intricately related. That's how I understand it to be. I mean, if somebody could explain it better, that's great. Manifolds are very confusing to me, but
you took
hang out.
Oh, Steve, when you were expounding on your genius, it made me think of when you were in the debate and you said that you had dealt with jet fuel, and I was going to ask you if you could elaborate more because I was talking to a 9/11 insider, truther or whatever they refer to themselves as, and they were talking about steel doesn't melt, and the guy I was talking to, he goes, I've witnessed this with my own eyes. I've seen car accidents where the whole car is melted, everything, including the glass, but the steel frame and chassis is still up in a solid. And I was like, I'm pretty sure glass melts at a higher temperature than steel.
There's a couple things at play there. One thing, you're talking about not just melting, you're talking about how structural integrities can change. And what the fuel I work with is called JP5. And JP5 has to do with how much kerosene is actually in the fuel. And there's different effects that JP5 have, as far as the ignition temperature, the point, what's called the point of ignition, the point where it actually can flash over because of heat and actually ignite itself. All these different fuels have different attributes attributed to them. But the thing is, though, all these different fuels, it can change the structural integrity of steel such that when steel gets heated up, it deforms. So you do have these synergetic effects with JP5 and other naphtha fuels that combine with things like called polystyrenes and polyethylenes, which are types of plastics that do result in a very hot that will pretty much melt just about anything. But you don't have to melt the steel beams per se. You just have to lose the integrity of it for have a building collapse. And by the way, I have put out a JP5 fire before. It's about 800 motherfucking degrees if I remember correctly.
Steve,
Sucks ass.
Steve, I have a question for you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So you guys talking about the different fuels and their ignition points and their burning rates, but it really is more than that. It's really about how much oxygen is available. You can actually burn coal and sit there and barely burn your wiener. But once you start pumping air in there, you're melting steel. So everything in that building,
huge factor in that. Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's really what it boils down to. That's how I would answer that, because yes, aluminum, melts at X degree. After what is it, 800, 750 degrees, 850 degrees or something, it can start having deformation. And jet fuel can burn at much lower temperatures. But once you start adding air into that equation, all bets are off. That thing get up to.
It doesn't necessarily have to be air. It could be any oxidizer.
Yeah, anything. You're right. Anything. And those elements you just mentioned are actually of a family of those, right? Those also aid in the elevated temperatures that you'll see in things burning. So they're forgetting the key point that it's not just this. What's the melting point? It's all the other factors, and that's where they kind of get disillusioned.
Remember that even as a kid, though, you're brought up to learn things are very basic level. Like, for example, we all heard of the fire triangle, right? But the fire triangle is bullshit.
Well, you put
it's a rectangle actually.
You put steel
there's
under
4 things that go into fire, not 3.
You put steel under enough heat for long enough, it becomes annealed. It's no longer hardened, and it bends. Just literally.
It has to do more. Look, if I take something and I heat it up really quickly and I cool it really quickly, if I throw it in water, steel tends to become hardened.
Right.
And when you have a crease in harder, you also have a change in brittleness as well.
Right.
The factors that go into a reactor, you have to heat things up very gradually and cool them down very gradually, or else it's susceptible to what's called brittle fracture. And I don't know about you, but when something's at 2,000 psi, you don't want that shit exploding in your face.
No.
Nope. But another thing that they constantly forget about and gloss over, like Graven even said it himself, it was like, oh, how can aluminum go through steel? The outside of the Twin Towers was not solid steel. It was actually predominantly glass.
Yeah.
They're going to know him as Wonton, not Graven.
On so many levels, right? I mean...
Well, these guys take...
Glass and aluminum frames, no less.
Well, these guys take science ignorance to a whole nother level. I mean, you can't even have that conversation with these guys about, the penetration forces and, all the Newtonian physics that we all maybe are familiar with. And we have to go back to basic things they actually can see and touch. I mean, you start talking about.
I mean, I had to take metallurgy. One of the courses you take in nuclear power school is metallurgy, and one of the courses you also take is it's not really a structural course, but it's involving things like Young's modulus, stress, strain. You have to learn about these things if you're going to operate a nuclear power plant. They're fundamental, right?
Yeah. But
that's some guy that says, "Oh, I've never taken a fucking single physics course in my life or science course, and I'm going to show you that 9/11 couldn't have happened the way they told you."
Yeah, but Steve. Law, liberty, compassion, and justice in the chat is saying, but no plane hit Building 7.
Different goddamn argument, right? That's a level of fuckery onto itself.
Forget about those that saw it.
There's different levels of fuckery. You got to start somewhere, okay?
Well, you know what? To be fair, that comment is correct. No airplane hit Tower 7, but the massive fucking radio tower from one of the other 2 towers did.
Oh, 7. WT7? Yeah, that's true. No plane hit WT7. That's true.
Yeah.
So is it worth actually?
Oh, Wotan, Wotan's in the outside chat now.
Oh.
We're actually arguing that they were drones.
Is it worth examining the evidence if their epistemology is so different from yours that they wouldn't reach the same conclusion anyway?
Well, I mean, I think part of it, honestly, if you look at like when 9/11 happened, right? A lot of people, even if they weren't there, were kind of traumatized by the event in the sense like, oh, not everything is as safe as we thought. Like, people could attack in a major way in a place where we figured that this kind of thing wouldn't happen. And when you're in that kind of like state, you're way more open to suggestibles. Like, so when like things like loose change came out and whatnot, people were looking for something to blame and just were willing to accept anything that sounded somewhat real.
That movie, I think, later on, I think it was kind of like, Al Gore's, movie on climate.
Michael Moore. Michael Moore also did that movie too, right?
Oh, by the way, Jared, according to Wonton, you're a condescending douche.
Yeah, he can lick my nutsack. Oh, wait, never mind. He's not worthy of that either.
It's funny because we were just talking about the reactor. Let's say it's a couple thousand psi, which it is. But Abad is in the live chat. He had just noted that when Ronnie had said that the water of the Earth during the I'm sorry, not during the flood. The water of the Earth during abiogenesis, he thought was 2,000 degrees. And he actually did the math. Bob did the math. At 2,000 degrees, water, gigapascals. And he just told me, I didn't know this, but he just told me that's 3.9 million psi. So in order to have Ronnie, the scientist's theory to be true, the Earth would have been under an atmospheric pressure of 3.9 million psi. Let's go with that. That's how incredibly astronomically wrong they are for their theories to come to fruition to be true, that it would require like catastrophic results that the Earth would be no longer here.
Seems logical.
Love when you have to destroy the Earth to have your hypothesis be correct. I think your hypothesis is going to be wrong.
Yeah, that's a problem.
You know what? I just want to say that somebody just posted in the comment that I thought was actually legitimately defending the Building 7 thing, that it was actually just hit by an X-Wing going at light speed, so...
Yeah, I'm down with that.
Yeah.
Why did it cause like a nuclear explosion?
The Non Sequitur Show Discord is in the video description. It's usually we have this on the Great Debate Community Discord, but since it was a Non Sequitur Show thing, we decided to use this Discord. So you can come on in. The Discord is in there. Hop on in.
It's called branding consistency, Steve, and it's smart.
No, after shows are everywhere. I mean, I don't mind having after shows on the Non Sequitur Show channel, which we will do sometimes. I do it on my channel an awful lot. We could do it here. We could do it on Dave's channel. I think we should share it all around. Whoever wants to do an after show.
You guys are talking about how that they blow out the Earth model completely and just devastate it. My biggest frustration is almost the hypocrisy of what data is accepted. One video I saw was a flat earther. The guy claimed to be like a navigator with extreme credentials. Didn't understand simple flight dynamics, but he made a comment. He said, I learned on the Sextant how to navigate using the stars, and he goes, and it's perfect because you have these really far away reference points. And then later in the video, like a half an hour later, he goes, this idea that GPS uses satellites, you don't need satellites, you just need close by towers.
I wish we would have gone into sextants and how they work a little bit. We've done it before. I think that if a flat earther can explain to me how a sextant works on a flat Earth model, I would love to hear that. Because I don't see it in any way possible how that would work. But I definitely had wanted me to bring it up in the discussion, but we didn't get to it. But if a flat earther wants to come in here and says, okay, let me show you how a flat Earth, a model will support a sextant, I'm okay with that.
Most of them can't even spell the sextant. I think the real test is just back to the simple basics. Hey, why does the sun set in the west everywhere on this planet on March 22nd, right? Rent this guy the theodolite. You had him going. You had Wotan going for a little bit there by saying, hey, get a theodolite and go up on Empire State Building or some tall building or a mountain and look at the horizon and look how it dropped, because, Jism, whatever his name is, was going up and down about the horizon never drops. It always stays at eye level. And those kind of things are really easy to disprove. And it kills me to not see these guys just take a simple test and perform it and then verify that, wow, it did drop.
You think they would, right? You think they would?
Demonstrate...
Oh, look, I've shown all these people to be wrong, and yet they don't do it.
But doesn't that demonstrate to you that they don't really care about evidence, and that's not why they believe it?
Just like religion.
So what's the utility in discussing the evidence and examining comparatively what different models predict when that's not the basis for their belief?
Jeranism argued a lot better than this guy, because the other guy never really conceded. Jaren conceded to actually move the argument along at times.
I distinctly remember when Jeranism was on, him, Wotan yelling, in the chat, going, "Oh, put me on! I can answer this. I can answer this." Nothing.
Wotan's saying there's a model for concave Earth that works. Then why not your concavist? I guess.
Concavist.
Snow globe.
All they know is that the globe Earth is wrong.
By the way, Wonton,
can't be the globe Earth.
Concave's model doesn't work. It literally doesn't work at all. It's the opposite of working.
I will give Wonton 1 point. I mean, look at so ingrained because everything indicates that the Earth is round. There's no fucking thing that doesn't. So when he says that, well, if we presented your model, you're automatically going to discount it. No, I'm not going to automatically discount it, but I do have a preconceived notion that is false already. I'm not going to deny that. I can't ignore my bias. The Earth is round. I know this to be a fact. However, given enough evidence, if there was ever a possibility of there being such evidence, I would change my position just like I would in anything else. But the problem is when you have certain things that are so overwhelmingly just not possible, like a flat Earth, the amount of burden of evidence that you would have to, and I don't mean an epistemic, but I mean an evidential one, to change my position on that would be almost pretty much insurmountable for all practical purposes. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, and apparently
The Earth is not fucking flat.
According to this stream, it requires overturning general relativity.
So many different things, and it just nobody could probably in one lifetime ever refute every single thing that invalidates a flat Earth. It'd just be too many things.
Whose volume is low, Lusty McButt? Mine or the rest of the Discord?
Yours.
Mine.
I'd really like to see a astronaut debate a flat earther.
They have.
They're actors. They're actors from Hollywood.
Yeah.
Not on my
I always love when there's video footage, like from NASA stuff, and the flat earthers say that it's photoshopped. Like they photoshopped the video.
It's Photoshop.
It is Photoshop. Like they don't even bother to say, oh, it's After Effects or like something that would make sense. Like they go, it's Photoshop, the video, the whole thing.
Can I ask that? Anybody who's the people that are experts on this? How do you use Photoshop for videos?
It does have a frame-by-frame animation feature, I suppose.
Frame by frame? But wouldn't that be fucking painstakingly stupid when you're going to use something like After Effects?
Yeah, but they're saying that it's done live.
I have a
it's
question.
photoshopped in real time.
I have a question.
Photoshop is easier to spell than Premiere.
Hey, I got a question for you guys regarding that video from the Stephen Hawking with the helicopter that went behind the curve, and they took the video.
I watched that.
So what was up with the three birds that kind of entered the scene just as the helicopter was dropping, and then as it was coming up, it obviously had been edited because those same three birds came by in the exact same sequence and spacing as it was coming up. Now, I obviously believe that this is a real event, but the way they edited it really made it look like it was it gives the flat earthers more fuel. See, aha, I caught you. You edited this thing, so the whole thing is discounted.
There's always reasons to edit. I mean, look at like the SpaceX thing when they had the booster, and obviously they
the wrong side,
and they changed. They got the right thing up there and they edited it. Which I still don't know how they did that on YouTube. If anybody knows how they did that without re-uploading the video, please let me know.
It was live. They had two feeds going to the same channel, so you had two right sides on either side of the main booster, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Okay, so let me get this straight. They didn't change it once it was uploaded and rendered. They changed it during the live stream.
Yep, apparently.
I thought they changed actual footage that was rendered.
If you look at it now, it's fixed. And
they fixed it after.
I don't think they re-uploaded it. And YouTube themselves has been known to provide ability to edit stuff without anyone knowing it.
Now I have no problem with them doing that because I have no problem with them doing that because they're trying to get the accurate thing. But of course, these flat earthers and their fucking conspiratorial bullshit thinks that they had to do this because they keep some massive secret. Well, I don't think YouTube's behind that massive secret because if you could expose these people, they sure would. Anybody can make a dime off this by exposing that the entire space program is a joke. They could make a fortune.
Oh yeah, and you know what? It's funny that that particular instance is brought up because during that whole Beeloo fiasco, there was a live stream that Glowbusters did that they went back and edited the audio out after it was uploaded. So apparently they're in cahoots with SpaceX too because they were able to do the same thing.
Surprise.
Yeah, while claiming it was because of a copyright issue.
I was in a conversation. I think Jared was there for the conversation. I tried to explain to one of these guys like the difference between CGI and just straight up compositing, like stitching images together, and went through the process of explaining it. And they basically said, as soon as you stitch something together, it's immediately a fake. Like even if both of the images or all of the images are real images, if you connect them, they're now CGI. Which
again, we go back to hypocrisy. That's what I'm saying. Is this these guys would go to get if they were to get married? I don't know if they'd ever meet anybody, but if they were to go get married, they're whoever they're marrying would say, put me in the best light, or they'd make sure they have good wedding pictures, and that's all photoshopped. Remove this bit of acne because I want to look my best. does that mean the event didn't happen? You know, they'll do that without any moment's hesitation, but then won't give the same credit to these institutions that are credible.
Yeah, yeah. If you remove the red eye, it's fake.
How do you make the argument? Which, and they're right, a composite picture quote isn't, you know, a true photo, but the photos are making the posits are true photos. They don't even address that. They don't ever address the fact that to get the composite, you need true photos.
The video images coming through their screen on YouTube are composite video images. It's red, blue, and green over and over and over again.
You have to
expose composite,
but it's all fake.
And you have to take in only certain wavelengths. There's a huge process, but that's all like Hollywood, right?
The monitor these days.
If only we could get them to actually, instead of just saying, "Oh, that's CGI, that's fake," just say, "This is CGI/fake, and this is why," and then actually have them explain it. But that will probably never happen.
They don't know enough about the topic to explain it. Period.
Exactly. They don't even know what's the difference between CG and CGI when movie producers talk about the acronyms.
They also don't understand.
They think the moon landing was CGI. Explain that one to me.
Yeah, CGI when it was broadcast live, even.
But
that one boggles my mind.
The government has technology that's always at least 50 years ahead. So, like, they have Photoshop 62.
Well,
and
actually, there was one documentary about how they could have technically faked it, but it would have cost so much money that it would have been stupid. It would have cost more than the actual moon landing. Like if you would actually go to the moon.
Well, that's because that's why Hollywood and Kubrick was in on it.
You know, Russia could always have found out that we did not go to the moon. We can't.
The amount of cooperation between countries who hate each other is just tremendous.
Including thousands of ham radio operators around the globe actually tracking them.
My favorite part of the debate was when, or discussion or whatever, was even though Kyle lost his shit and he started derailing and basically wanted, I could tell your hand was on the red switch. The best part was when Caitlin just comes in like those really good school teachers, to settle down, children, and just shut the room down. That was awesome.
Did you just call me a school teacher?
Dragging them across dragging them across the blackboard.
Her career. My finger was on that red button from like the first 5 minutes on. I mean, if I there were so many opportunities that I just wanted to get out of there. But
sadly, I gotta tell you though, I think that went better than had we had Reds. I really enjoyed that hangout. So I mean, I'm not saying it would have been bad with the Reds. It just would have been totally different and a different dynamic altogether.
Yeah, Reds would literally have fucked him up.
I have to commend you guys.
Kyle, you're the man.
I have to commend you guys on a certain amount of professionalism. You guys restrained yourself amazingly well. Just have to tell. Hats off to all of you.
I don't know.
You know what? It does take a little bit of effort. Kyle probably will lose his shit more than I, but when I lose my shit, because I've lost.
I don't do it crazily though. Like if I lose my shit on you, I mean, I don't want to sound like conceited or whatever. But you probably deserve it because usually I'm, chill and laid back. But you can't demand something of somebody and know going into it that it's not obtainable, and that's going to be your defense for why you believe what you believe. I mean, that's ludicrous.
When you're that dishonest, it's hard not to get up on their shit, right? When they
Bible is true unless you can produce a leprechaun. Like it's like
Steve.
Okay, in order for you to demonstrate to me that the Earth is round, produce a leprechaun kind of thing. Okay, well I can't. Ergo, the Earth isn't round. It's that level of dishonesty.
Oh yeah.
Unfalsifiable hypothesis.
Steve, on a scale from 0 to Shannon Q, where do you put yourself?
My ability not to lose my shit?
No, the ability to lose your shit.
Never really seen Shannon Q lose her shit. Well, she did the other day a little bit with the whole leaky O-ring thing.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking about. That was.
It's about the same level, though.
That was totally justified, though.
Over the years, have mellowed out quite a bit. I learned that losing your shit doesn't really get you anywhere. People love it. People love a shit show. They love when people lose their shit. It makes every hangout better when somebody loses their shit. But I try to avoid it. But like Kyle said, there are certain times with certain levels of dishonesty where you have no other recourse but to lose your shit.
I totally agree.
But I don't think he's dishonest. I think he truly doesn't know. He's completely ignorant.
I'm not so sure. I mean, just think about the very last thing he said before he jumped.
What was that?
I think he's dishonest. Honest.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
No experimentation. That's what he said.
Well, it's kind of like what Aaron said to Jeranism way back when they were having their discussion. And basically it came back to, if you don't understand it, then it's got to be this. I don't understand it, so this is my answer. So it just makes absolutely zero sense.
There's a truism to that. I don't like the whole if you don't know, if you can't prove it, you don't know it. I hate that. I think that's absolutely
so true, though. If you can't show it, you don't know it.
And that's retarded. It's absolutely
Well, and he
retarded. But I
doesn't
do.
It's
my
so
biggest
true, though.
problem. My biggest problem with him. My biggest problem with him is that he doesn't have any interest in actually doing the experimentation that he can do and learning. He has no interest in learning.
Exactly.
Well, he already knows it all. Right? He knows that the Earth is flat. He knows that gravity doesn't exist. It's all density and buoyancy. That the planes have to tip their nose to go around the Earth. I mean, it's just every single
gravity for buoyancy is part of the equation.
Yeah, buoyancy is not
know, it's
possible
hilarious.
without gravity.
They seem to like throw that part out the window. Oh, it's buoyancy.
Did he mention that though? I thought that he said like electrostatic or.
Oh God, he didn't.
Actually, electrostatic or electromagnetic.
Yeah, he didn't mention buoyancy in this talk.
He started.
He
have
literally
talked,
said.
he does acknowledge buoyancy.
Yeah, he
But-
literally said electric static.
At least he didn't just come up with the force of down, like I've heard in the past.
No, actually, no. You know what? I just remembered.
The down force.
Just the down force, yeah. No, seriously.
He talked about.
That's something that Formula One engineers worry about.
Yeah.
Downforce.
He talked about the actual acceleration of the plane. You guys cut him off when he was going down that path, and I was really getting at the edge of my seat to listen to him build on that. But
that's a different thing that you're talking about. They're actually, if I remember correctly, like it's kind of like what they call drafting or something like that.
For downforce.
Yeah, it's something that happens with the car, but I don't remember but that's a whole different thing. But I don't.
Yeah, no. He was talking about acceleration of the actual plane going upward at 9.8 meter per second, and that's what gives you gravity, or that gives you the force. But that means that we're going
downforce with the Formula One car. It has to do something with the
downforce is actually it's
downforce.
not
Downforce
what
is
you expect.
aerodynamic forces on the front and the back of the race car to keep it, have more pressure on the tires to give it more grip.
Well, see, downforce, you can get the air to push it down, but then you also have a ground force effect too.
It's like lifting off the ground.
Not really. It's mostly just downforce. There's nothing ground effects and tunnels and things. They're just to kind of neutralize any kind of lift. Your kind of negative lift there in that area, or neutralize.
No, you can achieve enough. You can achieve enough adhesion to the ground, like over 2,000 pounds of adhesion to the ground via a ground force effect.
Well, yeah, it's the Venturi tunnels is what they are. The ground effect.
Well, no, you don't have to do it just with a Venturi tunnel.
It's
like
literally
the fan car was famous. They just used a Chevy 350 to spin a fan, big fan, and they suck the car to the ground. It's the same deal. You're just creating the vacuum without the speed necessary to basically turn the car into a wing.
But to do that, you need to create a lower pressure underneath, and the only way to do that is with a fan. You can do that with Venturis, but that's really the only way you can do it.
Is that the whole point of the downforce? To create more of a vacuum, so you have less drag and more adhesion to the road?
Well, you can do downforce with the body of the car, though, but ground force effect is really what that tunnel underneath the car is.
Yes.
So like
the
ground
whole
force,
idea is
like
to create a
downforce, like if you look at like
low
an
pressure
Impreza or like a Mitsubishi Evo, that weird box shape is designed specifically so that when the air hits the car, it pushes it down in addition to the resistance of it basically trying to push it backwards. But they're trying to get it push it down. But ground force.
I race professionally, so I can kind of answer this pretty. pretty
You
easily.
guys are all talking.
I'm in the industry too, so I mean,
I raced the cars and designed the cars, and I've been doing pro racing for 20 years. So I've been in World Challenge.
So you explained it to me because I remember the term downforce when it comes to.
Yeah. So let me give it. Let me explain it. So you have a wing on the back of the.
Bad mics are talking.
What's going on? You have a wing on the back. You have a wing. Hello. You have a wing on the back of the car, which is basically an aircraft wing upside down. So now it's producing, lift in the opposite direction as it would on an airplane. You have a splitter up front that directs the flow. Instead of going underneath the car, it goes into the engine compartment or over the top of the car to create some downforce in the front. That's pretty much where all the downforce comes in most race cars. Then the Formula One cars have tunneling underneath the body, which has venturis, which actually lowers the pressure, which can, effectively, I don't like using the word suck, because vacuum does nothing.
Venturi, when you have a restriction, a venturi will actually cause a pressure decrease, kinetic energy increase, right?
Correct. Well, you have a low speed, higher pressure at the nose. It accelerated through the body, and as it exits, the pressure returns. The mass flow rate stays the same throughout. But then you have a position where you can put the vacuum with low pressure underneath the car. That creates more additional downforce. But that's only in Formula One cars.
It's a reverse wing, basically.
Yeah. So the wing in the front, and some have
like the opposite of a wing of a airplane.
Right.
Which,
it's lift, but it's pushed down.
Hey, now that I understand that, because I heard the term, but I didn't know enough about it.
I have an airfoil in the back of my race car, which is has an airfoil number. It could be there's a 4-digit number that talks about the profile of their airfoil shape. And I have some airplanes have this exact same profile. I have it on my car turned upside down on the back, and I can change the angle of incident and angle of attack based on the track and how the car's set up and all these kind of things to get down.
Zanuck, you clearly have studied fluid theory and
then of course you get nothing's for free. With every bit of downforce, you get a little bit of drag. So just like with airplanes, they have drag due to lift. You have drag due to downforce. So you got to think about the tracks you're going to. Do I want that downforce for the corners? Or am I willing to sacrifice the top speed for the drag I'm going to get going down the straightaway? That's the game they play in the engineering world in the race in the pits. So.
But isn't that the theory behind going to corner canards to try and get away from the constant drag of the front splitter? You get most of your push on the outside tire when you're turning.
The canards, there's some debate on how effective those things are as taking the air from going inside the fenders. It kind of diverts it out and gets some vortices on the outside of the car. But most of the dive planes and the canards are really designed for brute force downforce. They have a lot of drag, but they're fairly effective, and they have like a set of them, 3 or 4 of them on the sides of the car. A lot of drag, but a lot of downforce, and those are better for the real turny courses.
I've got a quick question. Is it true that modern Formula One cars, if they drove at top speed and were in a big pipe and could literally they could go up and they'd still stick to the roof at top speed because of the downforce generated by the car?
As long as they have a smooth transition across from the road surface up the sidewalls, yes, by the physics, it would be possible. They create that much downforce.
It's a lot of downforce.
They weigh about 1,500 pounds. Okay. They weigh about 1,500 pounds and can produce close to 4,000 pounds of downforce. So
Jesus Christ! What do you have to go in to get that much downforce?
Top speed.
Yeah, you go through. Go do a search on a racetrack called Spa in Europe, and there's this one segment of turn where they always show video of cars going through, and they have like the Class I race, Porsches and Vettes and Camaros and Mustangs going through the course, and then they show it immediately side by side with Formula One, and it's almost like that's fake. It's CGI. You can't believe how fast.
It kind of reminds me of like Men in Black, that scene.
Just like that's what it looks like.
You have a background. You don't really have a background in physics, so you know things like Bernoulli's equations and all that kind of stuff. How would you have explained when Wotan was talking about the helicopter thing? How would you explain the drag of the atmosphere along with the Earth on an atmosphere that's so small compared to the Earth, and without getting into?
Yeah, you have to
get into the science. How would you explain it to him?
So it's Newton's law is number 1, and Newton's law number 3. You got air. Let's say you got CO2 that's coming off plants. Where is it going? It's already moving 1,000 miles an hour with our Earth rotation, correct? So it's going straight up. So as it goes straight up, it's still going the same speed. Everything that's in motion will stay in motion until acted upon by another force, right? So all this gas and atmosphere came from the Earth and went straight up. So it's moving with. They try to think it has to be like magnetically stuck to the Earth or something. As soon as the Earth spins, or as soon as the gas is emitted, it just starts going the other direction.
That's the weirdest thing to me. That they have this mental image, like you said. If something leaves the surface of the Earth, let's say like an atom, let's say you said a carbon dioxide atom or something, it leaves the surface of the Earth, or a plant, I guess in this case, and then all of a sudden, as soon as it crosses some kind of boundary condition, it just shoots, backwards because it's no longer going 1,000 miles per hour.
It's just like when you jump in the air, the Earth doesn't move underneath you, or it's the same logic. I mean, and then they start saying, well, they can't understand how there's a vacuum on top and atmosphere down, and gradients of atmosphere all the way down to the surface of the Earth. Well, then I always use the analogy or comparison to water. Well, water is this huge pressure. Why doesn't it just down at the bottom and it's connected to this very low pressure on top? Why doesn't the bottom depths of the ocean fly up and explode into space?
It would be the same line. If the pressure of the ocean's so great, which it is, why isn't that just bursting all the oceans and blowing it into into the stratosphere?
It's fascinating because this whole topic is actually kind of fun for us because everybody here is a thinker and they all like to it forces you to kind of go back to the basics. Like we all take things for granted. We use it and we're like a step ahead of that. But when you try to explain the basics, you have to really go back and you kind of have to know your shit, right? You have to kind of think, well, what really causes this?
You got to remember, I graduated nuke school back in '89, and I got out of the reactor industry in '93. I mean, I'm old. So I have not really looked at any of these physics stuff in a very, very, very long time, besides the tertiary stuff that I'll look at for these discussions. But
it forces you to go back and what's nice about relearning it is it's easier because like, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah, of course,
Oh my God, yes. Dude, if I had never had exposure to any of this shit, I would have been lost in, I would say, 80% of these conversations.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And then there's a guy that's running around on YouTube interviewing people. In fact, he's going to schools interviewing physics students and trying to ask them, and they're trying to give him the complicated, and they're based on certain assumptions that we just know to be true. But this guy that's interviewing has no clue. You got to back up like several levels to say, "Oh, hold on there, Tiger. It's a lot more simple than that." The reason that this happens is because of that, and it's just the fact that the Earth curvature and things you can actually prove. This is my favorite. Why the horizon is not, and people say, oh, I go up 35,000 feet, I can see the curve of the Earth. And even pilots have said that. That hurts the logic in the science case because you can't see curve of the Earth. What you see is a circle that's straight all the way around. You have a tripod and a marker or a telescope, and you have it pointing out to the horizon, and you rotate it 360, there's going to be no curve. Why? Because the curve's away from you. And nobody seems to, not even on our side, they don't get that. The curve goes away from you. You don't see any curve. You look at the Earth even from 100,000 miles away. The horizon is the arc of that circle. The only reason you know that it's a ball is because you can kind of see the 3D image of the shape of it in front of you. But when you're on top of a building or top of Mount Everest and you look around, you can't see curvature. That's just the straight horizon all the way around you.
I think what we kind of probably should do from here on out, if you guys want to talk about flat earthers, we need to find one that actually has some kind of education, because it is just a waste of fucking time other than entertainment value, which it is. But if you want to have a serious conversation, and I mean the word seriously as in completely loosely farcically kind of thing, farcical, but I would like to find a flat earther that at least has some understanding of physics and math. Now, granted, I am no expert on these topics. Again, I've been out of school for a long time. Don't ask me to do differential equations. I'll fucking laugh at you.
Oh, God. Can't even spell it anymore. What about our friend Mullen? Where's Brian Mullen at when we need him?
I think you guys are going above their heads and just need to get down to the core of why they believe the way they believe.
I agree with you. I think that's kind of what we were getting to is, what is the reasoning why they have...
Tonight, we were going in a completely way too deep into the science.
But
I have a proposal.
Can we start with one of these guys getting a theodolite and seeing the horizon drop? I think that would be the crack. That'd be the crack in the iceberg. If you could get one guy to say, because I'm sure they're going to have by the way, they'll still have an explanation of why they saw that. Oh, because of perspective and an inverse divergent visual,
of the secant line from the bilinear, it's ridiculous the things.
Unbelievable.
I'd almost like to see someone like Anthony Magnabosco talk with a flat earther.
Yeah.
When they try to use words they don't like, subtended or refraction. It's like they really don't know what these words mean, but the flat earthers love to throw out words.
I have a picture of the sun rising through from an airplane, a sun rising underneath the clouds coming up. I thought that was the definitive proof. There's no way they could talk around that one. They did. You know what they talked about? The lights being illuminated from the sun via the surface of the earth. And some guy had like a little demo he made on a tabletop with a flashlight, and he got a piece of paper that was above the table to be illuminated by the light that was lower than it, or that was the same height as it. It's like, oh, you can't win. It's ridiculous.
Well, the best part I appreciate about that is everyone, I fly in planes all the time, and the best part of that is everyone assumes that we're always talking about the horizon that's curving, but they forget that you can actually see more curvature from underneath you out to your vantage point. So it's the curve with the terrain, if you will.
Well, one thing I've noticed about flat earthers is that they all agree on, even though they have all different points to the way their belief is, the one thing they all agree on is that you cannot circumnavigate the globe north to south. So they say that you can't go past the South Pole, kind of thing. So that's all you have to do to prove the flat Earth myth. There's no flight has ever circumvented the globe north to south. So, well, that's exactly what you do. And you don't have to circumvent the globe. You just start off at the very bottom of South America. You take off, you fly directly across Antarctica, and you land over in Western Australia. That's it. And you've proven it.
So why? But then you gotta, if they say that, just let them know. Hey, the Global 500 that Wolfie flies, that's got the world record for the for a circumpolar navigational or circumpolar flight. Then also you got the Polestar. There's like 4 flights that they did it, but currently the Global Express 500. That holds the world record for a circumpolar navigation. So just point him towards that.
Oh, really?
I learned that from him because he flies. Another thing is like he can show you a little bit, more. Like he shows a lot of videos because he can fly up to 55,000 feet, but he operates close to about 45 to 50,000 feet in that plane because it's a private business class jet. But it's one of the few jets that if with one fuel stop, it can fly from anywhere in the world to anywhere else in the world with just one fuel stop. But he takes a lot of videos where he could show you from 45, 50,000 feet, the sun below the clouds, illuminating the clouds, and it's just not possible on a flat Earth. And also, like he brought up, on a flat Earth, the horizon would never be at eye level; it would only be at foot level.
Well,
foot level, but it drops. See, you can use a number when it's acknowledged and pretty accepted is 3 degrees for 30,000 feet. And people, oh, you can't see 30 degrees. You ever see those rice burner cars, those with the fart cans and stuff, when they were camber all tweaked out on their cars? That's 3 degrees. You can tell when some cars all jacked up like that.
I'm from Las Vegas. Yeah, that's a daily occurrence there. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're up at 30,000 feet and you can have some type of device and you can make a cheap one or you can borrow a satellite, you look at the horizon, you can mark it on your window and then watch it drop down at 30,000 feet. It's significantly below you. And that proves that Jerem is wrong. Jism is wrong. I mean, he comes up with that every single time I hear that guy say a nonsense word. That's his main fight song. The horizon always rises to eye level.
If you guys have ever seen HUD footage on like fighter jet aircraft, like F-16s, F-15s, and there's a ton of footage from the '91 Gulf War where they're just cruising, massive amounts of land over like Saudi Arabia, and they'll be at 36,000 or 40,000 feet, and you'll see the artificial horizon line be significantly higher than the actual horizon line, and it's showing that your vantage point or your perspective doesn't follow the horizon.
Good one. That's the best one. In fact, that guy Wolfie has a video about. He's in some plane going 40,000 feet, and it shows that his heads-up display. And it shows his artificial horizon just dead nuts zero. It shows the altimeter not moving 1 foot either direction. Then it shows the actual horizon on a marker, and it shows it's so far below his level flight. It's not even funny.
Well, and then they say it rises to eye level. Well, that would imply that the Earth is moving based upon where you look. the only thing that
I think
moves
that
when
art
you,
is pretty well dead, though. I
when
mean,
you,
look how many times
no,
Reds
but,
and
but
John
wait a
has
second,
this.
Steve. My point is, the only thing that moves when you look somewhere is the muscles in your fucking head. Your eyes are moving to the level of the horizon, not the other way around.
Yeah. You're looking at it. Looking at it.
Because you're looking at it. You're centering it in your vision.
Right.
That's how the calculation works in the first place.
I
Right.
firmly believe that it's at eye level because all these folks walk around with that permanent, like, defeated by life slouch back look going on. So their head's already pointed down anyway, so it's right at eye level.
Right. They're half looking at their feet all the time, for fuck's sake.
Like, back to the drag race thing, though, if you took them to, like, the Las Vegas dragway, right, if you tell them, you look down the track, right, is the end of the track at eye level? And they'll tell you yes. And then you ask them, is the track flat? They'll say yes. Then turn around and ask a drag racer, is this track flat? And they'll tell you, hell no, it's going uphill.
Yep. Yeah, you can't. There's so many things you cannot see with the naked eye. It's like trying to see cells. You know, you can't. They're there. We know they're there. We can see them in a microscope, but you can't see them with the naked eye. So that's the only thing they believe. And when you talk to them, you have to talk at that level. That you have to show them and talk about things that they can actually prove to themselves with their own eyes. And there's only a few things that you can do that, by the way, because the Earth is so big and these forces are invisible. I mean, you have to really dumb it down.
The Hebrews already established 2,000 years ago that it's more than that. It's the breath of life. It's not cellular.
Hey,
Right, so
I remember, before I forget, the Coriolis. Oh, God. Go down that rat hole with these guys. You're really in for a treat, like you kind of were with this guy, the wonton. Coriolis only happens, I think, Steve, you alluded to this, things being shot north or south, and we can see it in storms, but of course our satellites aren't real, so all those images of storms are all CGI. But you can also look evotos, and that is when you shoot something west or east. So when you shoot west, you're going with the spin of the Earth, and because you got conservation of angular momentum, it actually will have some centrifugal force, and it will become lighter at 1,000 miles an hour. That's about 0.3% heavier or lighter, depending on the direction you're going. That's the thing they kind of talk about, and that does affect bullets and things by a couple inches if you're shooting a mile or something at super.
That's not a significant thing. I mean, on smaller projectiles, and you're not going longer. This is in what direction you're facing as well. But it does have an effect. It is taken account in the dope book.
Yeah, but
as far as the long range shot, easy way to look it up. It's a channel. It's all they focus on is long range shooting with the 308. They use that Arctic Warfare Magnum Lapua round. But anyway, they will show you that's the number one thing they do. They say, oh, you may have your rifle dialed in. You got to calculate for the Coriolis. And he takes a shot. These guys I think are in Montana, so they got plenty of open land. But they take a shot left to right, east to west, and they show you, look, this is centered on the target here and here. But when you go shoot east, it's 2 inches low. And when you shoot west, it's 2 inches high because the bullet's going faster, technically, one direction than the other. So it's getting to the target.
But that's evotos, and so that's the confusion that people get into. They don't understand the difference between the two. The bullet actually is lighter going east, so it actually will hit a little higher, and they can adjust for that. But when you start talking about Coriolis going northbound or south, it's such a small force. Nothing shot at anything that we can imagine would have really much of an. It has an effect, but it's almost immeasurable. There's air currents and temperature changes and other things that would be far more influential. So what happens is they interview some sniper that's been doing this for 20 years, and he can shoot a friggin' flea off of a dog's back in a mile. And that guy attests, nope, there's no Coriolis because I never think about it. I never incorporated it into my sighting. And that's their logic. And so these guys aren't experts, just like the air traffic controller that says the Earth is flat to where we don't have satellites, or it's just the testimonials are off the hook. It's ridiculous.
I don't understand how people talk about Coriolis effect like it is. I understand that it's an inertial force by definition, but I mean like a physical force in the sense of like your wind is affected. They don't realize that the end resultant wind relative to you is a part of the Coriolis effect, so it's already accounted for. When you take off in an aircraft, you become a part of the air mass. It's not like you're still flying through air, you're with the air mass. So that's why when planes first lift off the runway, they generally get clearance from the tower that'll say maintain runway heading. That means they do not correct for wind They just literally maintain that same heading, and they will drift. If you stand on the ground and watch them, they'll go left to right if there's a crosswind. So, the only time Coriolis effect has any effect on an aircraft or a bullet or anything is when you're trying to get it to hit another ground target.
That's the whole point, right? I mean, you're trying to hit something, right? And of course, the Earth is rotating, so yeah, I don't see how they don't get that particular concept.
Well, there's also
and the whole worse is, wait, they think, like when he brought up like the Foucault pendulum, he thinks that if you have something stationary above the Earth, it's going to be affected by the Coriolis effect. How does that work? Where he even came up with that from?
These are the same people that don't understand why a rocket has to take off and then arc out to sea, arc out, eastward. They think, well, that's see, they're faking us. They're not going in orbit. They're just going out to, Africa. They're not really taking. They're not going. It's like you can't.
Not even going out to east, but the fact that, can you imagine trying to put a rocket up like going straight orthogonal to the ground?
Yeah, you know how much fuel you'll take, and then by the way, what happens when you run out of fuel? No matter where you are, it'll come straight back down. It'll come straight back down. It'll be
orbital injection when you're just going 90 degrees. And how much fuel would it take to actually lift vertically? God,
yeah. And what are you going to do how far are you going to go? You only can go so far until you run out of fuel.
You would just go up and straight back down. That's all you're going to
do. That. You just
that's the fundamental thing that they have absolutely zero clue. Go back to the Coriolis effect, though. There is an element that on that Brian Mullen guy was. I watched his video a few times, and I ripped him into him, and it didn't matter. I think the guy ended up evaporating or killing himself, or I don't know what happened to him. But the projectile going north, even though there's air masses moving around, there is a law of conservation of angular momentum, which means this thing is starting out kind of going fast around, eastward around the Earth, because the Earth is rotating eastward. As it goes north, the surface below it actually is going a slower speed, so it starts to veer off to the right because it actually has more inherent energy. And that's why it goes. It's a fictitious force, but it will occur. Just the same thing as they show on merry-go-rounds when people start throwing balls to one another across the merry-go-round. Now, if you're on a train track and you're on a high-speed rail tied to the train going to the North Pole, the force is still there and it's very real. But what happens is that force will actually be you'll be slowing the Earth down or speeding the Earth up. So those forces they're there, but it's more complicated physics. It's not just first year; it's second, third, fourth year, and most of the stuff. Like Steve, I've forgotten all that. I can just remember the basics.
Again, I think it's more.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I took those courses eons ago. I mean, Jesus Christ! But I did have to learn about fluid theory. You had to learn about Bernoulli's equation, a lot about Bernoulli's equation actually, because a lot of the things that we did had to do with changes of volumetric flow rates going in and out of tanks. You have obviously potential differences in the height of the pipe. You have kinetic energy changes. You have Venturi effects because the restrictions of the pipe. All these things have to be taken into account when you're figuring out you have from point A to point B, right?
Right. Hey, have you guys ever thought about getting a hold of Mark Sargent? That guy is probably the leader of the whole. If we can knock down the leader, maybe the rest will fall behind.
Yeah, he was watching the other day, but I reached out to Orphan Red to try to get him to come on in, but I think his
deal is I think he wants to be paid, hotel, airfare, and wherever he is, he will debate any round earther. As long as you have a physics degree or a science degree, he will debate you. And the guy has absolutely. He's one of those guys that doesn't believe rockets can work in space. And it's another funny subject, right? Rockets.
Somebody like that. I mean, if you want to debate somebody that has a degree in science, that's fine. Great. I don't have a problem with that. But when you advocate such a position that rockets don't work in space, what I would expect from you at the bare minimum is to show me a free body diagram of why they don't work. And I've never once had a person show me why a rocket doesn't work in space, because you're obviously saying that the law of conservation of linear momentum doesn't hold. Okay, show me why.
Because of science.
A lot, Steve.
Science.
Have you heard that debate? They all kind of, not a debate, they were all getting on the same bandwagon. It was Mark Sargent and Journalism and Morgile guy, and they were all saying, oh yeah, of course it doesn't work in space. It's just, and they understand the physics. They talk about the example of being on a skateboard and throwing a bowling ball off or something, and the bowling ball goes one way, you go the other. The force is exactly the same, but the acceleration is based on the mass of the two objects that have been pushed against each other. So they get it, and then they say, well, the reason that rockets don't work in space is because you have to have a lot of bowling balls. You got to keep on throwing them out, and bowling balls weigh a lot too, so you'd never be able to get them up in space. So that's why you can't go. That's why rockets don't work in space. It's like they forget the fuel, the 1,000,000 pounds that those rockets take up with them. Where does it go? Somehow it's gone. Is that not a mass? Are those not molecules and atoms of of substance that are being ejected out at, unbelievable velocities.
Massive velocity.
Yeah, same force. The same force on the little particles of fuel that comes out is
Jared.
applied to the rocket. Now, one's going a lot faster than the other because the mass is infinitesimally small compared to the rocket. Yet it still has the same force. Why? Because of Newton's third law. And so they understand Newton's third law. They just don't know how to apply any of it. And they either got to be playing with us and they're driving us
The
crazy.
reason. No, see, but I don't know if I can fully agree with the fact that they understand it. Can they parrot it? Sure. But
yeah, they parrot it. You're right.
And by the way, Herman, you want to check your mic real quick? We got Herman Mays in here.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Friend, how you been?
I'm pretty good.
It was actually our first episode on Non Sequitur. He had debated Ken Hovind and crushed him.
And next is Jensen. He will be going against.
Oh yes, we're coming up with
Jensen.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Up a little bit there. Herman
I'll have to do slightly more homework for that one than for.
Okay, so Herman's a prior guest?
Yes, the first guest.
The first guest. Okay, so that
Yeah.
would make him a deacon.
Oh.
Right.
I gave him choir member, but I wasn't sure what I was looking at these. I would give him deacon. Is that what it is?
Deacon's his prior guest, yeah.
Wow, that's wonderful.
And is he also a fellow creator? Which is a YouTube creator?
You have a YouTube channel, do you?
No, I don't have time for that,
creator.
unfortunately.
Okay. Well.
I got enough going on.
I read a lot of Herman's chat messages during the show. I thought they were pretty good. I'm glad to see you join.
I was about to leap out a window listening to that. I thought it just drove me insane. It's crazy.
And put up with a lot of shit. It's a heavy burden to bear what we do.
It was horrible. I mean, it was wonderful and horrible, and just all rolled into one.
What do you think is more against the evidence, flat Earth or young Earth creationism?
They're both
flat Earth.
They're both equally stupid. I mean, they really are both equally stupid. And one thing is, one thing I realized a long time ago with creationists, and I think everybody did a great job talking about the science, and any rational person would listen to that and go, oh, well, I guess the Earth is round. But it's not about the science. I really honestly think that once you realize that for them, it really has almost nothing to do with the science.
I agree.
Then it starts to make a lot more sense.
And I think that if you want to talk about evidence, you need to first ask them to answer the following. Name one thing which the flat Earth model predicts that is different from the globe Earth model. And if they can answer that, then you can start talking about evidence. But if they can't answer that, then what's the point in talking about it?
But I think that still is trying to I think that's still the assumption there is that they want to engage in a scientific explanation. Like if you and I ask you to tell me the predictions of your model, they're not interested in that at all.
Right. That's right. That's why it's like a litmus test. If they can't do that, then you don't discuss it.
Well, yeah, you're right. And they don't. And creationists are the same way. They have, I think a lot of them have a lot of grievances. I think they have chips on their shoulders. I think they have some kind of, it's almost like more a culture warfare kind of thing for them than it is a real scientific debate. It's a tribal kind of thing as well. It's much more sociological than it is scientific, because the scientific argument for it is absurd. I mean, it's why would you think that?
Do you really know that this level of dumbfuckery even existed before you found all this with us and shit? I mean, were you surprised that this
Thank
was
God for
actually
YouTube, right?
thing that was out there?
I grew up going to Southern Baptist Sunday schools, so I know full well all this stuff that goes on.
Not even they could prepare you for what we saw tonight, though.
But I don't think anybody.
Herman, turn up your mic a little bit if you can. You're a little low.
Oh, sorry.
I don't think any one of them is ever going to admit or even mention a difference in the model, because that's their whole premise. That's the foundation of why they can continue to do what they're doing, is that everything we see is correct and everything, our model doesn't act any different than your model, but we have an explanation of why that. We have a spotlight sun, we have holograms, we have this, that, and the other, the ice wall. I mean, everything, and they have an answer for every single. I mean, you saw the 200 proofs, right?
technical issue.
Yeah.
Wisdom vendor, speak up.
Yes, I should have known going into this whole thing tonight that. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were talking.
Wisdom vendor, your mic is way incredibly low to the point where it's not even.
Okay. He was going to be. He was going to be disingenuous from the very beginning, because the first question that I ever asked him before we even went on air was, and I wanted his honest opinion on what he thought. I asked him this very simple question. I said, in the flat Earth movement, what would you say the percentage is that of people who actually believe that the Earth is flat, and those who are just doing it kind of to have that, rebellious title of being a flat earther? And he legitimately said that everybody that claims to be a flat earther is a flat earther. Like that was his.
That's bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they're all flat earthers in the sense of they're in the club, but I just don't. I think they believe it, but I don't think they've thought about it. It's not a belief they have on the basis of any meaningful science at all.
I think kind of like religion, it relies more on what they can get out of it personally, like either emotional satisfaction or monetary gain.
I think what it is on a lower level, like the street level folks, it's a club thing. But I think it's the same thing with all woo peddling. It's once you get to a certain level, it's not about actual belief in it, whether it is or not. It's about that paycheck. It's that money making.
Yes, I agree.
I think you're right. I think at a certain level, the upper echelons, most of them probably know this stuff's bullshit.
Yeah, because like you said, the dude said he'll debate anybody that will fly him out, put him up, feed him, clothe him, give him a paycheck, and put him up in front of other people that he can convince. Even if you can only convince 20% of people, those 20% of people, that can, you can get 3-4 people under you, you can live a decent life. You get 200, 300,000 people up under you, you can live a pretty damn good life.
I mean, to be fair, Aaron Ra is doing the same thing, right?
It's all about whose soapbox you're willing to chip in a few dollars to make it down the hill.
Can I test my?
I mean, I don't think he's perfect in his methodology by any means, but at least he is trying to put forth, as you have pointed out, some of his science may not be perfect, but the fact that I think he at least tries, and he's making enough to support himself. But I gotta tell you, the young earthers that are the head honchos and the flat earthers head honchos, it pales in comparison with those guys make.
Pales. Yeah, I'm not.
What kind of money do these guys make? What kind of money is there in this YouTube hosting and?
But just for the community here, Jeranism's Patreon was about $1,000 a month at one time.
You're kidding me. Unbelievable.
I'm going to tell you, these guys' goal is to be the Creflo Dollar of flat Earth or whatever they're doing. That's their goal, because you will never see a situation where even somebody they're out to speak the truth but try to make a dollar off of it, like Aaron Ra, or to support himself, whatever you want to call it. I'd say support himself, but you're never going to see somebody like that make a call for a G550 Learjet that costs $27 million. And that shit, $27 million, I think. It might be 52, but I think it's 27 million. And they get that shit even after they get called out on national TV, like, you don't need this. And their congregation's like, yeah, he needs it.
Yeah. By the way, Jaren's Patreon, believe it or not, it's been a while since I looked at it. It's up to now $1,400 a month. So he gets $1,400 a month to promote absolute bullshit.
Is that just his views on the YouTube, or is it his channel, or how's that work?
That's just Patreon.
He probably makes additional, I would say $500 a month just off YouTube. So he's making $2,000 a month minimum just for spewing bullshit.
The biggest bullshit of all time. I mean, this is in the history of the universe. This is
Hello, testing.
Well, a lot of people make a lot lot to spew bullshit.
We can hear you, Wisdom, but
I
had to boost you here. I don't
You're right. I'm sorry.
What happened?
I had a conversation. I had a conversation about Georgia Purdom and Nathaniel Jensen at Answers in Genesis.
Is that on?
And I don't think they make a lot of money doing what they do. Now Nathaniel Jensen might make a lot more now that he's selling a book, but they don't make a lot. AIG doesn't give them a lot of money, but the difference
I think
is
they probably make more from
what they're
speaking
doing
venues.
You just
is
got
an
to
easier
assert wisdom vendor.
yeah, what they're doing is an easier path to a career than, say, getting a tenure track faculty job. Like Georgia Purdom and Nathaniel Jensen wouldn't be competitive to get even a mediocre tenure job at a regular university. So it's much easier for them to go this route.
I hate to ask this, but in your professional opinion, you are fully qualified to make this assessment. Do you think that someone like Georgina would be tops in her class? Or because I don't know her standing, but even if she was, do you think she's academically sound enough to obtain a position
Is that more acceptable
in any reputable capacity? I mean, she may be competent.
No,
I don't know, but do you think she's competent?
I think she's competent, but she might be competent. But think about it. The research that they did when they got their PhDs had nothing to do with creationism. So everything that they're building their reputation on as a scientist who is a creationist, that science has nothing to do with creationism. Now,
I mean, I think that part
and
of it
they
is
didn't really
for reality, right?
when there's a break, I might.
They also don't, so they might be competent in the narrow field that they did for their PhD, but that doesn't make them competitive. They're not competitive for a tenure track job at all. Georgia Purdom has like 2 publications, and she's not even first author on them. And Nathaniel Jensen has maybe more. He has like 4 or 5, but he's not first author on all of them either. I mean, it would be the kind of applications that we would get in even at Marshall and just throw to the side. They wouldn't even be competitive for Marshall.
There was one, Jim. Are you familiar with the creationist Jim Mason? He's
I think so.
And he did his paper on rubidium and strontium nucleotides to get his PhD. And now, of course, changed all of that to, oh, well, we get radioactive decay rates are, not true. He did his PhD paper on decay rates. I don't see how people can change like that. It just, is that a compartmentalization problem?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's compartmentalization. And I think to some degree too, the job market in academia is very tough. And if you have those beliefs and you can compartmentalize that, it becomes kind of an easy career choice for you, where you can, I don't have to do a 4-year postdoc, and I don't have to, look for 3 years for a job with everybody else in the world.
They're taking the easy route.
Yeah, and if it aligns also with this thing that you want to believe, it becomes kind of an easy thing. There's that other guy, that Gunter Benchley guy from Germany. He was a very sort of well-published curator in paleontology in a museum in Germany, and he switched to the Discovery Institute. And he apparently had some religious conversion or whatever, and he decided to leave. So he actually had a pretty solid career, but that's pretty rare that somebody like that goes into creationism.
Yeah, I just can't imagine that. I mean, I understand the people that throughout their whole lives, but who the fuck gets through a PhD program and then says, I'm going to throw this all away to go think that the Earth is young or flat? I don't even see how that.
It's stupid.
I'm 100% on board with you.
Wisdom, you're really too low.
Well,
I'm sorry. I tried to amp my mic. I don't know what's going on with it.
Hey, Wisdom, come to the test room with me. I'll help you.
I will say this. You guys just spent all this time talking about other people's Patreons and didn't even have the little bit of selfishness to plug your own, which you should, because you deserve it.
I don't really plug yours that much. And I don't get me wrong, I'm thrilled to death we have Patreons. I survive on my Patreon, and I probably should push it more often. Like hockeying all the time. It's just, but.
And that's the difference. That's why the young Earth creationist, the flat earther, the conspiracy theorist, the Alex Jones, that's why. Because when it comes down to it, there's no compulsion factor to get over on anybody. There's no There's no, or should I say, on their side, there's no hindrance to getting over on somebody. They see a chance to make $1 or they're like, that's the easy path, and I'm gonna get it, and they take it. They run with it.
I want people to be patrons because they like the product. They like the show. In fact, somebody just messaged me, and I don't know if they're still listening. I don't know if I mentioned their name because it's a direct message, but somebody just messaged me. They just said, hello. I wanted to say I thank you for and I enjoy your work, kind of thing. Those mean more to me than in some ways than a Patreon, even though I survive on Patreon, but I love when we get comments like that. I know Kyle's been getting a shit ton of them as well.
We don't do it for the money.
Yeah, I know you guys don't do it for the money, but that's exactly the reason you deserve to get more of it, right?
Steve, if I could just take a moment, you wanted me to plug your brain growth pills. You can get these on Amazon for.
And if you want to buy some B17 to cure cancer, you can go to the website.
Hey, that's not funny.
Hey, don't forget that beta male vitality.
Yeah. Well, if you aren't willing to promote your Patreon, I'll promote it for you. Patreon.com/non sequitur.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Quick, someone make a sad puppy commercial.
By the way, guys, while you're on the subject of creationism and everyone kind of poo-pooing that, and I'm in the same boat, there are some scientists, legitimate scientists, PhD scientists that study climatology and are legitimate, powers in those fields that still believe in creationism. That Ken Ham guy is a classic example. I mean, he'll debate it very well. I have my feelings and the knowledge that I've learned in school over the years, but that's all been gone. But he actually is a student of that topic, and he's got a good case for it. I don't buy any of it. I think a lot of it's, what
Ken
if?
Ham?
Is it possible? Yeah, Ken Ham, right?
I didn't buy his debate when he was against Bill Nye, and I mean that was just helpless. He was helpless there.
But so he made some points that you really can't. Where does it all come from? How could all this happen? Just
the stuff that Ken Ham says is no different than what we were listening to tonight from his flat Earth guy.
Yeah, I think the correlation to be said. Yes,
he's he's a professional. He's not some guy with no offense, everybody, but he's not some guy with a YouTube channel. He has a multi-million-dollar business that he's been doing for decades on this, and he's very good at it. And that's the difference between someone who spews out bullshit and is a welder and has a YouTube channel and someone that spews out bullshit as a professional.
Yeah,
and
Ken Ham
but it is nonsense.
Ken Ham he's not bringing up things and saying, well, that's just fake or that's a CGI. He actually has an
argument. He's just saying it's God.
Yeah,
no, he does.
Whenever you get a question,
absolutely, he says right out, "This is all fake."
You're right.
That all the evidence for evolution's fake. He'll say that shit.
You
know what? God is CGI,
and he's not a scientist.
But you got to know your product, man. You cannot sell a Ferrari to somebody that's looking for a minivan. It's just not going to happen. You got to know your product, and these guys know their product, and they know who's buying it, and they know how to package it.
But isn't the irony about those two guys are both kind of, Bill Nye's not really a science guy. He's an engineer that promotes science. But they went in it. And so Bill actually I'm on his side there. And Ken's kind of like, it's just God. But then when it comes to climate, Ken really knows his stuff. And Bill doesn't know his ass from the ground. So, I mean, it's kind of a disparity that's pretty entertaining.
You think Ken Ham knows about climate more than Bill Nye?
I think he knows a lot more than Bill Nye does. I mean, I just think, can we talk to like Richard Linson and top people? I don't have a climate debate here, but there's a lot of data both ways, but they start shutting down. This is where the dogma comes. The word dogma came in our discussion earlier, is that the climate, pro-climate, I'm not going to say which way I go, you can kind of sense, but when they start going to the way that it just, the way 99% believe this, the way it is, so move on, there's nothing to discuss, or there's no debate. That's the dogma. That's when that's not how science works. And that's the camp that Bill Nye.
Now I am kind of curious. We don't have to have a huge discussion on it. I'll tell you my position. And Zanuck, is that how you pronounce your name, Zanuck?
Zanuck, you can call me Mark or whatever you feel comfortable with.
This is my position, and then maybe Herman can bring in his. I personally think this: climate change is undisputably a fact. It happens. There's no question about it. We know that there's been a 2-degree increase over the last couple hundred years. Non-disputable to me.
Right. Absolutely.
Agreed that. I do think it's probably anthropogenic gases. Mostly, but I do think there's also solar effects and some other things that are going into that.
So many things.
Hang on one second. So is the argument for climate change, is it occurring, or what is the primary the climate change? I think the second question, the people want to try to argue. I still think it's anthropogenic, but the question of if it happens is just not debatable to me.
But the
Here's-
solar
can I
radiance has
answer
been
it?
decreasing.
Well,
As the temperature's been going up, solar radiance has been decreasing. That's what I don't like, is that you got to go to the primary source. It doesn't matter what Bill Nye says.
That's where all
But
the
the first
models
question is:
come
does
into play.
climate is there a change in climate? That has to be the first thing that has to be asked.
Steve, yes, you're right. Climate does change, and it's been changing for millions of years, no question about it. Now, is CO2 tied to changes in temperature specifically? Well, that's very
Yes.
debatable because there's been.
Yes.
hold on.
No, it isn't.
That's
Hold
not-
on.
Oh no, there's no debate about that.
There's
It's
no debate about
intricately
that.
No,
tied
hold
to
on.
it.
Let me finish. There's been plenty of time. For example, I'll start out really simple. From 1900 to 1940, CO2 did not change, yet temperatures skyrocketed to the level that not the duration and then the amount and how fast they went up. All skyrocketed.
We're not talking about, but that I think there's a problem here because I said there are other factors that are going to change. But we're talking about when we're talking about climate change, we're talking about an overall change of the climate, not weather. We're talking about over a period of
I'm
hundreds
not
of
talking about
years.
weather. I'm talking about overall climate change. So I just
No,
let
but
me
you're
finish.
talking about a span of like what? Would you say 10 years?
When I said 40 years, so 40
yeah, but
years
see,
there was
that's
no.
not-
Hold on. There 40 years there was a huge change in temperature, but no change in CO2. Then
what-
there was a change in
what
CO2.
years was it?
1900 to 1940. So
You
before,
don't. There's a big thing to happen there. Just pointing that out.
You
What's
honestly
that?
are going to try to tell me there wasn't an increase in CO2 in the atmosphere between 1900 and 1940, the industrial fucking revolution?
it was after it really started not being a factor until after 1940. So-
Right, because after 1940, we basically had to rebuild the fucking planet.
Exactly.
Because we went to Bikini
Stars,
Holes and blew them up. We blew up
You can
all
look
of
at- you can back
Europe.
up statistics.
We went all
Also,
over the
you're-
place, man. We
there's
were
also-
going everywhere.
Right. So that, and they have, so the thing you talked about as far as climate is models, and the models taken everything, and the models have been proven to really not work that well. In fact, they said that they have a baseline of if we double CO2, this is the temperature change we should see based on the models, and we've already got about 70% of the way there to doubling CO2 since the Industrial
How much-
Revolution.
And let me ask you this: how much do you think? And again, I'm not fully convinced it's the primary. I think it probably is, but I don't. And I even asked this question to Pothole at 54. Very same question: is there any studies that show that anthropogenic gases are the leading cause to climate change? Now, it's still unresolved, but they think so. The overwhelming majority of consensus is that is the case. However,
consensus-
how much do you think, if you had to give it percentage-wise, do anthropogenic gases contribute
I
to
think
climate change?
I kind of go along with some of the top scientists that aren't on any payrolls that are kind of doing this for like the love of this science, like we are here. Like what's the guys that run the satellite programs, the guys that build the actual data sets for the people that make the models, guys like.
But you're speaking to the mind of individuals. Have you met these individuals?
I actually know.
I met a couple of them.
But hang on, I don't want to hear about the people. I'm just curious about the number. What number do you think it is? From
So
your
for me personally, so I'm kind of in their philosophy, and they've given me a lot of information over the years, and Potholer and I've gone back and forth for a year on this, and I finally it was just like a stalemate. He kept on bringing up peer.
Awesome.
I'm not going to listen to it, so it's peer reviewed. Well, most of the peer reviewed, if you understand how the peer review process works, it's really skewed to people that get money or some kind of acknowledgement or accreditation through their efforts.
No, it isn't. It's
What
supposed
number?
to work
Just
that
give
out.
me a number.
But there's
Or
not.
something.
Okay, I'll give you a number. So I think probably I would probably give a pretty small weighted percentage of how much anthropogenic warming is caused by our production of CO2. I would say probably maybe a 25% chance of that happening. And it's based
okay.
on, yeah, because there's so much data available that.
Hang on, Herman. What would you place it at?
I would say that regardless of what I say, the people who the consensus among climate scientists is that
There's no consensus,
most-
by the way. There's not
yes,
consensus.
there is.
There's really not.
There's a majority consensus.
I don't. Hang on, guys. I don't care if there's a consensus at this point. Let's get a number from him first, so we can get a
Consensus
baseline.
The consensus position is that most
That was a
of the,
bogus study by Moore. All right.
Let him fucking. God, we
The
don't care if it's a
consensus-
consensus or not right now. I'm asking for a baseline so I could understand where your both positions are.
well,
So hang on
I
for a
think
second.
I want to be clear that I, as an individual, will not put a number on this. right now at 12:30 at night or whatever that is. But I do know that the vast majority of climate scientists will tell you that most of the climate change that's occurred in the past century has been due to anthropogenic sources of carbon.
Percent by most scientists.
Will you all do me a favor? And this will be an interesting one. I think you'll really enjoy it. And whether you're on one side or the other, doesn't matter. Go look at Richard Linson, and there's a debate with Gavin Schmidt, who's he's like the flat Earth leader. I hate when I use flat Earth. He's the leader of the alarmist side of things, and then Gavin Schmidt and Richard Linson. He was the head of MIT's meteorological department. Okay, the guy's a brainiac beyond words. And they have a team of 3 people. They did this in New York in New York City, a very liberal area, by the way. And they had like a vote at the beginning, and they had a vote at the end, and it was very interesting to hear both sides talk about it. Watch that video and listen to the logic on both sides. You start having a little bit of doubts of whether it's settled. At least you will have doubts whether it's settled, whether you believe one way or the other.
Wait a second. Are you appealing to public consensus? Because if you take public consensus, almost 50% of Americans believe in a biblical creation story. Does consensus? It doesn't matter when facts come into matter. Science is a cold hard bitch with a 14-inch strap on. She's coming for you.
That sounds fun to me.
Richard Linson was head of the physicist. He's a physicist, all right? He was head of the Department of Climate Science over at MIT. Not a dummy.
For a second,
Easterbrook, University of Washington. I mean, Art Spencer is running the satellite program for the entire world for satellite imagery. Whether you get temperatures based on thermometers or satellites, I mean, there's great disparity on the data. So all the scientists have their data. These are the guys that do this for the love of the science itself, and they have a debate against the people that are alarming, saying it's all done to man, and the people that say, we don't think so because of the PDOs.
Zanuck, I have a question real quick.
So can I ask one more time? Herman, I don't want you to give a particular number, but would you say that is true that most climatologists and scientists would estimate that probably at least half cause for climate change is due to anthropogenic gases? Is that a true statement?
Yes.
You think? Okay. I think you're right on that, but I want to make sure that you guys are coming from very different positions here.
So
I would like to add that this notion of consensus needs to be explained a little bit.
And hey, Zanuck, before you get back on your point, I just want to point out, last week, I was talking with Landon Kirtnall, right? And he's a real smart guy. And when the topic of climate change came up, one of the things he was pointing out is you're not just looking at the gases and the CO2 and whatnot that are being generated now. You're looking at sort of an acceleration factor because you're getting a lot of CO2 that's releasing from permafrost that we made. It was trapped in permafrost, and now we're heating things up, but we're also releasing basically CO2 that we've been making for the last long fucking while at the same time.
And we're releasing methane stores, and methane is a far more powerful greenhouse gas.
And think about where that carbon came from. Carbon that we release, the carbon that we release from combustion of fossil fuels comes from fossil fuels, which means that plants sequestered that carbon from the atmosphere and put it in their tissues, and they got buried. And then what we're doing is that millions of years of accumulated carbon in the ground, we're releasing in the span of a few decades. So we're releasing literally millions of years of carbon that's been sequestered and fixed by plants over, this long period of time in a very short period of time. And we know that carbon is a very strong greenhouse gas. That's just a physical property of carbon dioxide.
I mean,
wait, carbon is not a greenhouse gas? Is that what you said?
Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas.
No, carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide. You have to look at you have to look at the statistics.
It is a very strong.
What happened in the Little Ice Age? What happened after the Little Ice Age? We've been coming out.
That was local though. That was not a global ice age.
Too, but right. Okay. Let's talk about
it's like hold on. What happened to the hot period that was in the Middle East or in Europe? That was local, but it was not a global situation. What we're talking about is a global temperature rise in the sea temperatures. So let me finish. 1 degree. You understand what happens when water heats up?
I do. And I do, and I've talked to the scientists about it. So let me finish the point I started to finish at the beginning of all this. They talked about the IPCC came out with this number, said if you double CO2, what happens? So they predict the temperatures globally could rise between 1 and 3 degrees centigrade. So what's happened since this whole thing came out, since the 1900s when things were basically the starting of the industrial revolution? Well, we're about 70% of the way of doubling CO2, but temperatures have only gone up 0.6 degrees.
No, we're almost at the 1 degree mark.
Yeah, that's not true.
0.6, 0.7,
Yeah. We're about 1 degree. We're at least at 1 degree.
But they're saying doubling it will be 2 to 3 degrees, but we're already almost 70.
I'm pretty sure at that
But you do
time-
understand that there's a significant gap in time between the rise in CO2
Okay.
and the rise in temperature globally,
Then
correct?
that argument can go back into
And
history.
there's a
You
few
can find out
different
where,
things.
where CO2, hold on, there's been times over the last million years, even 500,000 years, where temperatures have actually skyrocketed and CO2 has lagged behind.
Right, and that's what they would expect to happen because
Why is that?
it's an ebb and flow effect that happens over the course of hundreds of thousands of years.
Well, no, it's usually
But
100
what we've done is
years
we've
your last.
achieved that same effect in less than 200 years. That's all we're saying is that, yes, this has happened before. Yes, it can happen naturally. But in this particular case, it's our fault. So we might want to get off our ass and do something about it because we've gone past the point of no return. Now we have to mitigate the consequences. We're not going to prevent it. We have to mitigate the consequences because right now we're in what's called a positive loop effect. And if we keep pumping energy into the system, because we've already gone to the point where we've started causing changes, and those changes are causing more CO2 to be released.
Hold on. You're making statements, scientific statements. What do you have to back up?
Because if you look at there's scientific papers that show that what we're doing is we're melting permafrost. Permafrost not only contains CO2, but that is not the main importance. The importance is that we're releasing methane, and methane is a extremely powerful greenhouse gas, and that's when stuff starts getting serious.
So what happened in the middle? What happened in the middle of a warming? What caused the middle of a warming?
No, but we're talking about the past right now. What can human race do to affect
hold on. CO2 was not involved. We had temperatures skyrocketing where they were farming in Greenland, but there was no CO2 that caused it. So what caused it then?
That was local, though.
No, it was all over the world. No, they have ice core samples, Vostok ice core samples that show temperatures were high back then too. It was all over the globe.
Okay, can I make a couple points here, real quick? First of all,
I just going to
actually
it's getting late. So Ermin, everybody.
Yeah,
hey, would you guys do me a favor and watch that? Would you watch that debate for me? Remember, it's Richard Linson. Write down Richard Linson against Gavin Schmidt. Just do a search, and it's about an hour. You don't have to watch a whole hour, but just watch the beginning, watch the middle, watch a couple of the guys' presentations, and you might get a different flavor about really what's going on because there's so many factors. They're saying most of the top scientists in the know are saying natural variability, not so much man, but man could be a problem. We don't really know. We don't know enough about the systems.
I would need to see the papers that they base their conclusions off.
There have been papers written about PDOs being the major cause. Clouds. Now, clouds having an opposite effect, which they're using in the models. They didn't have that before. Now they're thinking the reflective forcing actually
that's been included. That reflective force has been included in the models, and it's not a reductive enough force to counteract what we are doing.
I'm talking to Spencer. I'm talking to Spencer. He runs the models. They build the models. He runs the satellites. He tells me these things. So this. It all depends on who you talk to.
Do you mind? I chime in for a minute.
Go ahead.
Just first, there has been past climate change, and there are lots of different factors that affect climate change. My colleagues and I study past Pleistocene climate change and its effect on animal populations. Those changes weren't due to anthropogenic carbon. You're absolutely right. There can be different mechanisms that cause different climate change. Climate change we're seeing now is not the same thing as the climate change that occurred at different points in the past. So there's that. Second point is consensus is a very specific thing in science. And when you talk to people who really don't have any expertise, like the flat earth we were talking about today or creationists, one of the arguments is, look, if a reasonable thing to do is if you don't know enough to make a decision on a complex scientific issue, one proxy way that you can evaluate the evidence is to look where the consensus is going. And it's not a popularity poll. It's based on the evidence, and it's a proxy way to determine the support for an idea.
Actually,
the consensus, let me finish this point. The consensus is very strong on the side of anthropogenic climate change. If you go to places like NASA or the National Academy of Sciences, these are widespread things with thousands, literally thousands of papers supporting this position, and a tiny minority of papers that cast any doubt on it. And finally, one way that I identify people who are science denialists is by listening carefully to how they talk about people who take one position versus another position. Often what you'll hear in a science denialist argument is that people who take a position they don't agree with are doing it for the money, or they're doing it for some ulterior motive. People who take the position they do agree with, that's maybe the minority opinion or the one that's against the consensus, are sort of the mavericks. They're in it for the love of the science. You hear sort of a painting of certain people in a certain light if they have a certain position, and the painting of other people in a different light if they have a different position. I can assure you that the people who study climate science, like myself, are not drawing conclusions to draw a paycheck. I can promise you that. So it's not like we're fat cats that are rolling in money because we support the idea that the data tells us that anthropogenic climate change is a major driver of the climate change we've seen in the past century.
These fundings, the funding efforts and the studies, no one
and
gets
peer review is another one. Have you ever been involved in a peer review process?
Actually, many years ago I was, but that's...
I'm involved in it right now all the time for 25 years, day in, day out. Right. And it has its problems, but it's not as you characterize it.
No,
Can you
explain I'm grossly generalizing for this one specific area of science because of the fact there's so much popularity, there's so much in the liberal side of things. They're really pushing for, let's put the blame on man. Let's do it. And here's what we need. And this is going to fund clean energy. It's going to fund this, that, and the other, and the Paris Accord, and all these things that we've all looked into to some level. But the point I'm trying to make now is
can you explain just how much some of the equipment you use costs?
What you're doing right now is exactly what creationists do.
No, hold on.
I was about to say that. I've been trying to say that for like 30 minutes.
It's exactly what they do.
It's a quick thought. So the reason I kind of, mentioned the money and alter motives is because of the fact that there's really little money to prove there's no problem. And there's a lot of money to say, hey, we suspect there's a problem, let's throw money at it. That's kind of
Wait a minute. You're saying there's no money to prove there is no problem?
There these people that I know that are
oil industry.
Ever heard of the oil industry?
Right.
They were one of the first people to identify anthropogenic climate change as, quote, a industry-ending problem.
Possible problem. Right. They know they were producing greenhouse gases, and that could be a problem. And then the scientists dug into it.
No, they didn't say it might be happening. No, 60 years ago, they said, look, we're pushing this product worldwide now. This is a industry-ending problem. What do we do when it either runs out or becomes such a problem that they ban our product from sale?
Right.
And Zanuck, it seems like you argue against creationists and flat earthers, but it seems like you're using their argument style.
My thing is that if the people that are selling the product were the first people to raise the warning flag, then the problem is real.
Well, then now you're doing the same in reverse, right? Now you're saying it's because it's oil back. These guys aren't oil back.
No. What I'm saying is that they themselves identified that this problem was an industry-ending problem in their own words, because they feared the product was either going to run out, or if they could keep enough product flowing, it was going to get banned from sale because it's so toxic to the environment.
He was actually responding to your original claim. He was responding to your claim that there is no incentive for arguing for the denial side. You made that claim, and they were responding to it by pointing out that there's the oil industry.
And Don Easterbrook, and these guys do all the research on their own, and they've tried to do papers and try to do,
Will you at least concede that point for the audience?
Yes. I think you're right.
And what I'm saying is that when they identified the problem and they knew it was coming around the corner, they got their money behind, they spend their money. They don't make money off of denying it. They spend a lot of money to keep the problem from being recognized as bad as it is, because they can still make some money, but they're spending a lot of money to keep it what they can under the rug.
And what just a minute ago we were talking about flat earthers making money.
Well, I'll just close with this. I encourage you to listen to people like Richard Lindzen or people like Don Easterbrook. It's getting a little long in the tooth now, or Judith Curry or Art Spencer. Or a lot of the.
It sounds like you have a whole lot of confirmation bias going on here. You're
No,
not.
it also, to me, no offense, it sounds to me like what you're doing is you're saying, hey, I encourage you to watch some videos by some people I think are smart while ignoring somebody who you're speaking to right now in the field.
No, hold on. They're both in the video. Gavin Schmidt is the kind of leader of the alarmist side, and I think Lindzen's, getting a little older.
Again, you're not talking about the science. You're talking about.
There is a reason to be alarmed, right? Like that's. Like you say, alarmist. Like it may not be a correct thing to be alarmed about.
Well, look, I'd be alarmed if there's a chance of something happening to our planet, which I dearly love, as you do as well. Listen, the only point is I brought those people up is that I've listened to the arguments on both sides. I've listened to the science and I've seen the data, and it doesn't. There's no.
I have too.
Okay, well, we can talk about that later. We can discuss that later. But hold on. I've seen the data on both sides. I mean, you've talked to Pothole, or we've gone back and forth. We've had hours of discussions back and forth about this. He makes his point. I make my counter.
Zanuck, buddy, I have a question.
Yeah.
So you and Masher here have two different opinions on the subject. How do we know which one's true?
I don't think you have to really know which one's correct. I don't think either one.
Yes, you do.
Yes, you have to. You really do have to.
Okay, basically, you just did a young Earth creationist.
This is what we're saying is that the train is speeding towards the cliff. You need to know if the train, if the bridge is out. Is the bridge out?
By definition,
is the bridge out? Is the bridge out?
It is. You're saying if
the train is heading towards the cliff, we need to know right now if the bridge is out. Because if the bridge is out, we need to start throwing stuff off the train.
You don't know there's a problem yet, though. If there is a problem, we should worry about it. Yes, you're true. But is there a problem? Do we know there is a problem?
Yes.
If we don't know, let's protect ourselves. That's a straw man. We don't know there's a problem.
And what you're doing,
there are other
saying,
environmental
look
problems.
Look back to the end of the train. Don't worry about what the look towards the back of the train.
It would only be a straw man if we're not talking about your argument.
Let me
we try to establish something different?
I was going to give both sides the air here. Hold on. So when I listen to a Bill Nye or someone who's not a scientist, when I listen to people that, even like Galvin, who's one of the head of NASA Goddard, when you listen to, why aren't they talking facts? When they have these arguments and discussion, and I've listened to these guys and I've watched these presentations over and over again, and I'm going, God, if they're right, why do they keep on going back to, consensus and things that are not science? And the other side is
wait. Hold
on, can I try
if it's done by the experts?
I was talking to experts. I'm talking to
experts because they're trying to appeal to the common man, and the common man.
No, they're not. No,
yes, they are. They're trying to appeal to the common man. They believe that the most popular opinion is the correct opinion. The person that yells the loudest wins the conversation, or wins the argument. That's what they're trying to appeal to.
The irony of that
am I in any way correct?
All the scientists used to think the Earth was flat. There was consensus for you, right back at you. I mean, come on, that's silly.
Oh wow, boy, he just pulled another creation.
Do you know why? You know why they believe? You know why they taught? You know why they taught in school in the 19th or the 20th century? Why they taught in school, especially in America, the Western world, that Europeans believed that the world was flat before they found America? The reason was to promote a sense of American exceptionalism above our competitors. That was all it was. It wasn't any way the facts, because anybody that's a historian would go, that's not true. They knew the world was round. They knew the world was round. They just thought there was a faster way to get where they were going. They didn't think America was in the way.
There's been lots of consensus. Consensus is not science. Okay, so in looking at the facts,
consensus of the scientist is science.
Zanuck, you're over talking everybody. Zanuck.
Yes. So listen. So all I'm saying is I've listened to both sides, and I've listened to the data, and I've seen the data, and listened to how it's presented and how it's correlated. And
have you learned any damn science though ever?
What's that?
Have you ever learned any actual scientist?
Bender, that's the wrong question.
Have I ever spoke to any scientists?
Zanuck.
No. Have you learned about any actual science?
Have I ever learned about science? Yes. Why?
Bender, that's the wrong question.
No. You said you've heard scientists. And you've read what scientists have to say, but have you actually learned any science?
Of course.
Zanuck.
Then prove it.
Zanuck, you have a claim here.
Science, that I understand physics, I understand the basic biologies.
No, okay. In physics, what is mass times acceleration?
What is mass times acceleration?
Yes, basic physics.
Force.
What is it?
Force. What was your point?
Okay. Okay. Then what is gravity times mass?
What is gravity times mass?
Mm-hmm.
Acceleration.
No, gravity is acceleration. What is gravity times? See, you don't know physics.
Vendor,
what is gravity times
that's
mass?
not even helping the argument.
Vendor,
No, I'm proving that you don't know physics.
I do know physics. We talk.
No, you
We're
don't.
not talking
You
about
just proved
physics here, Vendor.
don't.
Zanuck, Ken has been politely requesting to make a point, and maybe you could allow him to speak for a moment, because you've had a lot of time to talk.
Okay.
Who? Me?
Yeah.
So
Yes, Zanuck.
it went into a political direction, and I'm just wondering, Zanuck, like in terms of policy and that type of thing, are you in agreement that there are good independent reasons to curb pollution of greenhouse gases, independent of the climate change issue?
Independent of climate change.
So, for example, just to reduce pollution and increase air quality in waterways and things like that.
I've lived in LA. I lived in Northern California. I've seen the results of all the efforts the EPA had on cleaning up the carbon emissions or toxic emissions of most carbon burning, fossil fuel burning.
So you at least agree then that, like, as a species, we have independent motivations to move away from fossil fuels for our energy sources.
Yeah, I think it's inevitable. We're going to have to do that because there's the pollution still being generated. We can't remove it completely, and we're going to run out eventually. So we better find another way to produce energy for this for our society. And is it batteries and solar right now? Probably not. But I think we need to be delving in those realms so we eventually find the right solution. It might be nuclear fusion or fission, right? So
we're agreed on the right direction. Maybe we just have disagreement on the time frame in which we need to act. How immediate do you think that we need to act with respect to the pollution concerns independent of climate change?
I think that's a great question. I think there's a cost associated with reducing emissions now and accelerating that plan like a lot of people have talked about. I think it's going to impact the less fortunate around the world by making trash of actions now for an outcome that is probably suspect at best.
Zanuck, you said you're into motorsports, right?
Correct.
Okay, so you've heard the phrase "it's cheaper to repair it now than later," right?
Oh yeah.
And it only gets more expensive the longer you wait, right?
An ounce of prevention, yes, but
is worth a pound of cure, right? Okay, so what we're doing right now, we're saying throw the brakes on as hard as we can right now, because the longer we wait to pump those brakes, we're just getting closer to the corner and we're not burning off enough speed. We're going to end up in the sand. That's what we're saying right now, that we're going to end up in the sand. But what we need to do is avoid hitting the tire wall. And if we can do that, then we have a chance for them to pull us out and put us back on the track. That's what we're saying right now.
I understand that, and let's say it was, and indeed, let's
finally can hear me. I have
side is completely correct. Let's say there is an issue, and it's all man, and most of these people on the consensus side say it's the temperature rises we've seen.
What we're saying is the reason why it's going so fast is because of us, and that what could be happening in a few 100,000 years, we're making happen in a couple 100 years.
The rate of temperature change back in the 40s, 1900 to 1940, was the same as it is today. It's not the same levels temperature-wise. That was the medieval warming, but it has risen before.
But after 1945, during the World War II, we went everywhere. We started exploring parts of Africa that had never been explored before, and then after that, we started shipping stuff from the First World War,
right?
First War. We started industrializing nations, millions upon millions of people, and between I think it was 1900 and 2000, we went from 1 billion to 7 billion people. These people are using cars. These people are using trains. These people are using coal-fired power plants. These people are burning stuff outside. It's not just cars. And that's what you got to understand is these people are using any form of combustible fuel to generate energy that they can.
I understand that. And the things we're doing in this country are pale by comparison what happens over in China and in India.
Okay.
And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to end the stream. Unfortunately, it is my bedtime. So, water is flat. No, water is level. Kilimanjaro, however the fuck you say your name. But how dare I be pragmatic to reality? Well, unfortunately, if I stay awake, I will fall asleep while it's streaming. And the last time I did that, someone threatened to commit suicide via my own computer. This is OBS, so it goes through my machine, and I am not doing that. I would have no problem doing that on the GDC channel with Steve in it, but unfortunately this is a level above that. So, anyhow, have a good evening, and you can keep chatting, and I think the chat will still keep going nowadays. I stayed in one for an hour. So, you can also join the actual Discord. The join link is in the description, so you can go over there and actually join the Discord and keep listening, as long as they keep talking, and you can actually talk, because there's plenty of people there that can give you permission. And I will see you later.